Chapter 441. At the entrance of Tianyu Branch Academy, Luo Qingtong stood with a group of people from Dongli country, waiting for the teacher to announce her name list. She met Chu Wenhao and the others on the way here. They were all from the eastern border country, so they naturally stood together. Chu Wenhao's name was given by Luo Qingtong, so he was very grateful to her. The group of people from Dongli country came together, relying on his strength and the prestige of the Chu family. Chu Wenhao had become the leader of the group. His attitude toward Luo Qingtong influenced the group. At this moment, the group of people from Dongli country were eagerly waiting for their names to be announced. Qingtong, you will definitely be assigned to the elite class this time. Chu Wenhao looked at Luo Qingtong and said with a smile. The group of people came from the same place, so they quickly became familiar with each other. Chu Wenhao calmly called out Luo Qingtong's name, but he didn't know that in the latter's sleeve, Little Pig was sweating for him. Young man, I respect you as a true hero. Fortunately, although Yi Qianxian was prone to jealousy, he wasn't crazy enough to make a move on someone just because they called out Luo Qingtong's name. Looking at the seemingly cute but actually ferocious little doll sitting in the sleeve, Little Pig silently moved a little further away. Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong's name was called from outside. The teacher in charge of announcing the students' class assignments raised his voice and shouted. Dongli country's top student, assigned to the class. The instructor's voice suddenly stopped at this moment. Well, what's going on? Looking at the class on the list, the teacher almost thought that he had seen wrongly. How could it be this? He carefully looked at it again and again. After confirming that he didn't see wrongly, he said in disbelief, low class. Wow. A commotion broke out in the surroundings. A top student was actually assigned to the low class. All of a sudden, the surrounding students who were waiting to register were in an uproar. Even those who did not pay attention to the situation here understood what was going on from the discussions of the people around them. Low class, that was the trash class. Most of the people who were sent and were not talented and were destined to have no achievements in the future. Otherwise, it would be those who had no talent at all and were just idling around in the Tianyu branch. In short, it was just a place to waste time. When the people of Tianyu Branch Academy mentioned the lower class, they all had an indifferent attitude. The people inside were trash at the bottom of the Tianyu Branch Academy. Because of their lack of talent, they were destined to have no achievements. The teaching of the lower classes was also the worst. The standards of the instructors inside might not even be as good as some of the genius students in the elite classes. Luo Qingtong, the top student of Dongli country, was assigned to such a class? This must be a joke. If it was an ordinary student, everyone would have just listened to it. After all, it wasn't as if there hadn't been students with decent grades who were thrown into the trash class because they offended someone. Most of those people quickly quieted down after entering the trash class. From then on, he had no more achievements. However, this Luo Qingtong was the number one in Dongli country. This was the first time that a top student was assigned to the trash class. What's more, Luo Qingtong was the fiancé of the empire's fifth prince. Everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. Their faces were filled with unspeakable astonishment. This could be a mistake. With her grades and identity, she shouldn't be assigned to the trash class. Chapter 442. We don't accept this. Luo Qingtong is the top student in Dongli Kingdom. How could she be assigned to the lower class? This class allocation is unfair. Chu Wenhao was the one who spoke. He entered Tianyu Branch Academy with Luo Qingtong's recommendation letter and was assigned to the upper class. Now that she heard that Luo Qingtong was assigned to the lower class, she immediately shouted indignantly. How dare you? When Chu Wenhao's voice was heard, a cold voice was heard. Behind the teacher's seat, a young man dressed in blue silk suddenly looked coldly in Chu Wenhao's direction. Who are you to question the academy's decision? Luo Qingtong did defeat Luo Qingtong and became the top student in Dongli Kingdom. But according to what we know, Luo Xining was wearing the Luo family's heirloom armor and her strength sword. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong defeated her easily. We have reason to suspect that she is not qualified to be the top student. Moreover, the young man looked at Chu Wenhao arrogantly and said, Luo Qingtong was too ruthless in the arena. She even dared to attack the invigilator. Considering all the above, it is not wrong to assign her to the lower class. If you don't accept this, then, he sneered, you don't have to enter Tianyu Branch Academy. You. Chu Wenhao looked at him, and his face turned red. Who are you? This is the academy's decision. It is up to the teachers to decide. You don't have the right to decide. Humph. The top 10 students in the genius ranking can participate in the decision of class assignment. My words have the same effect as the teachers. When you enter the top 10 of the genius ranking, then you can question my qualifications. The young man looked arrogant. He looked at Chu Wenhao with disdain. Zhan Haopeng, I await your instructions. Wow. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the registration area was in an uproar. The top 10 students in the genius ranking are likely to enter the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin, right? Yes. It was said that at the end of the year, those who managed to secure a spot in the top 10 of the genius ranking would be recruited into the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. The top 10 of the genius ranking are half the students of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. I didn't expect to see such a person at the registration today. These top 10 students on the genius ranking are so domineering. They actually have the same authority as the teachers. That's right. I've heard of this Zhan Haopeng. He's ranked 5th on the genius ranking. He has basically entered the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. By the way, I heard that his instructor was Old Chu, who was seriously injured a few days ago. Someone whispered, no wonder he wanted to find trouble with Luo Qingtong. I heard that when Elder Chu was invigilating the examination in Dongli country, he was angry because of Luo Qingtong's collision. In the end, he accidentally provoked a passerby and was seriously injured. When he was brought back, he was on his last breath. He almost couldn't be saved. Hearing these words, Luo Qingtong finally understood why Zhan Haopeng was targeting her. He was Old Chu's disciple, Luo Xining's senior brother. No wonder he was so arrogant. Unfortunately, she was exactly what she wanted when she was assigned to the lower class. Luo Qingtong was still worried that she couldn't find a chance to enter the lower class openly. This Zhan Haopeng had helped her a lot. However, even if she wanted to enter the lower class, she couldn't let others set her up like this. Luo Qingtong looked coldly at the arrogant Zhan Haopeng. Chapter 443. Luo Qingtong attacked Luo Xining for a reason. Elder Chu was injured because he attacked Luo Qingtong first. How can you put her in the lower class because of this? It's not fair. Chu Wenhao argued. Junior brother, what you said is wrong. At this moment, a clear voice suddenly came from Zhan Haopeng's side. A young girl wearing a jade moon-flowing silk dress looked in Chu Wenhao's direction with an indifferent and graceful expression. Even if Elder Chu attacked first, it was because Luo Qingtong attacked first. Moreover, how can personal grudges be settled in the arena? The school's decision will not be wrong. You'd better leave. The girl's voice was like a bird's chirp. It was very pleasing to the ear. She was very dignified and dignified. The crowd looked at where she was sitting, and suddenly there was an uproar. Another top 10 student on the genius list. I know this one. It's Shi Qingqing, the daughter of the right prime minister of the Tianyu Empire. 7th on the genius list. Oh, she is indeed the #1 goddess of the Tianyu branch school. She is beautiful, elegant, and powerful. She is really powerful. The discussion came in waves. Luo Qingtong fixed her eyes on Shi Qingqing. To others, Shi Qingqing's words might have sounded like she was speaking from an objective point of view. But Luo Qingtong heard the hostility in her words. She deliberately agreed with Zhan Haopeng's words. Her purpose was to confirm that she was in the lower class. That was interesting. Zhan Haopeng had a grudge against her because of Elder Chu. Why did Shi Qingqing do that? Luo Qingtong looked at Shi Qingqing. The latter was also quietly sizing her up. Luo Qingtong, the young lady of the Luo family of the Dongli state, the fiancée of the 5th prince. When she thought of the last 3 words, Shi Qingqing clenched her fists in her sleeves. A girl from an inferior marquise mansion had become the fiancée of the 5th prince. What did she do? And she even went to the Tianyu Palace to break off the engagement. She dared to do this. Wasn't it because she was relying on the 5th prince's loyalty? How could such a woman be worthy of the 5th prince? If it was her, Shi Qingqing fiercely clenched her fists. Her facial expression was completely airtight. Junior sister Luo, as the fiancée of the 5th prince, we should let you go. But there is indeed a problem with your qualification. Elder Chu was seriously injured, and we had no choice but to put you in the lower class. But she looked at Luo Qingtong and smiled. If there is no problem with your qualification, then you can return to the elite class. If there is no problem with your qualification, then you will be able to return to the elite class. If there is no problem. If there is no problem. Shi Qingqing's words were reasonable. She even apologized to Luo Qingtong for being assigned to the lower class. But if you looked at her eyes carefully, you would find that her eyes were full of coldness and malice. No one had ever been able to rise again after being put into the trash class. Her words seemed to be flattering Luo Qingtong, but in fact, she wanted to step on Luo Qingtong better in the future. As long as Luo Qingtong entered the trash class, she could guarantee that she would not have any chance to rise again. She would not let her rise again. Luo Qingtong could only wait to rot in the trash class. Shi Qingqing looked at Luo Qingtong with a smile, waiting for her to agree. Chapter 444. Oh, is that so? So you're saying that Senior Shi and Senior Zhan's strength were also promoted from the trash class? Luo Qingtong looks at her indifferently. The sarcasm in her words is too strong, and Shi Qingqing has no way to answer. Naturally, her strength had risen step by step from the elite class. If she was in the trash class, she would have long been left in the dust. No matter how good her talent was, she still needed someone to teach her. Otherwise, what was the difference between her and being a waste? Of course, Shi Qingqing would never say this to Luo Qingtong. But if she said that she was promoted from the elite class, how could she convince Luo Qingtong to go to the lower class to gain experience? After all, she herself wouldn't go. This Luo Qingtong is really a bit difficult to deal with. Shi Qingqing looks at Luo Qingtong, and the light in her eyes becomes colder. But the smile on her face doesn't change at all. Junior Luo must be joking. She looks at Luo Qingtong and smiles. Junior Luo's talent is extraordinary and naturally different from people like us. After all, you're the fiancé of the 5th prince. When she says this, she slightly lowers her eyes, hiding the uncontrollable jealousy and hatred in her eyes. This kind of woman is actually the fiancé of the 5th prince, that kind of proud son of heaven. The jealousy and hatred in Shi Qingqing's heart can't be dispersed. She must trample Luo Qingtong to the bottom of the mud. She must let people know that this kind of trash is not worthy of the 5th prince. Oh, Luo Qingtong looks at her and smiles. Shi Qingqing thinks that she hit it very well. But the jealousy and hatred in her eyes, even if she lowers her eyes, can't be concealed. Luo Qingtong has a keen grasp of people's hearts. In front of her, Shi Qingqing's magnified malice is as bright as a firefly in the dark night. You Ma's admirer? What a big rotten peach blossom. But since the other party wants to rot in front of her, how can she not help her? But her heart is really disgusted. Luo Qingtong was disgusted. She didn't want to have anything to do with you Ma, let alone help him deal with this kind of rotten peach blossom. How troublesome. After the Tianyu branch, he would immediately deal with the Tianyu royal family. Her engagement with Yu Ma must be annulled. If the royal family of Tianyu wanted to use force, they would have to see if she would give them a chance. Once the Luo clan's strength increased, she would make sure that Tianyu's royal family wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Luo Qingtong looked at Shi Qingqing and said, Senior sister Shi is right. You and I are indeed different. As she spoke, she suddenly took a step forward and took the class allocation results that the instructor read out. I accept this result. Clear pupil. Hearing her words, Chu Wenhao and the others became anxious. No, you can't go to the lower class. There, the teaching was too bad, and these two people will definitely target you again. At that time, you won't be able to make a name for yourself. Chu Wenhao was anxious. He wasn't deceived by Shi Qingqing's words. The other party's words were clearly forcing Luo Qingtong to go to the lower class. As long as she had the ability, she could return to the elite class. As long as Luo Qingtong was different from others, this was clearly a provocation to raise Luo Qingtong so high that she had no way out. Clear pupil, you mustn't fall for their trick. It's okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. A caterpillar can turn into a butterfly when it breaks out of its cocoon. A hidden dragon can rise above the 9 heavens when it enters the abyss. The lower class isn't as bad as you think. There's a saying that goes, humans can conquer nature. What's wrong with the trash class? Who said that the trash class couldn't produce geniuses? Chapter 445. When Luo Qingtong said this, the bloody light in her eyes flickered. In that clear reflection, the light in her eyes was so confident and dazzling. It was as if what she wanted to go to wasn't the lower class that everyone called trash class, but the peak that everyone couldn't even look up to. Chu Wenhao looked at her. The words that he wanted to say were suddenly unable to come out. He suddenly had a strong premonition in his heart. That is, this girl can definitely do it. She will break the curse of the lower class being trash class and walk towards her own glory. She will create another legend that belongs to her, far surpassing the legend created by Yu Wenma. At this time, Chu Wenhao's vision wasn't big enough. His eyes could only see the Tianyu Empire's small area. But he didn't know that Luo Qingtong's future achievements were simply beyond his imagination. And he and the Chu family, who had been following her closely, also received huge benefits. From then on, they broke through the peak, reaching a level that they didn't even dare to think about. Okay. He looked at Luo Qingtong, nodded, scratched his head, and said, if it really doesn't work, I'll come and teach you after listening to the teacher's lecture. Chu Wenhao was still a bit uneasy. In his view, the lower class teaching might not be as good as his own teaching. He really couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. But the reputation of the lower class being trash class was too widespread. No one had ever been able to make a name for themselves after entering the trash class. No need. Luo Qingtong listened to his words and laughed. To be honest, her recommendation to Chu Wenhao was not a loss at all. At least he didn't alienate her because she entered the trash class, but instead helped her find a way. But Luo Qingtong had the eye technique, so for her, entering the lower class or the elite class didn't make any difference. But Chu Wenhao, although he entered the upper class, the competition inside was fierce. If he really did what he said, it wouldn't be long before he was kicked out of the upper class. The gains really didn't make up for the losses, and it was completely unnecessary. You study hard, and later when you enter the elite class, you'll have the right to speak. I'm still waiting for you to back me up. As soon as Luo Qingtong said this, Chu Wenhao instantly felt that he had a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. That's right, Luo Qingtong was assigned to the lower class. Wasn't it because of Zhang Haoping and Shi Qingqing's strength in the Tianyu branch? The top 10 students of the genius list had special privileges. If he became more powerful, he could help Luo Qingtong. Thinking like this, Chu Wenhao's heart's hard, and his attention was also diverted. However, Shi Qingqing sneered in her heart when she heard the conversation between Luo Qingtong and Chu Wenhao. Was it so easy to enter the top 10 of the genius list? How many high-class, middle-class, and low-class countries were there under the Tianyu Empire? There were so many students to the people. Tianyu to Luo to the top 10, the top 10. Shi Qingqing smirked. Luo Qingtong was daydreaming, but the disdain in her heart didn't show on her face. Instead, she gently and generously said, that's right, if you enter the top 10 of the genius list, you will have the right to speak in the Tianyu branch. Of course, it's the same for Junior Luo. I believe that even if you're in the lower class, you can still stand out and enter the top 10 of the genius list. Shi Qingqing's face was smiling, but her heart was full of malice. Entering the trash class, Luo Qingtong wouldn't even be able to enter the top 100 of the school in the future, let alone the top 10. Sure, Qingqing's words were not so much to encourage Luo Qingtong, but to ruthlessly trample on her. Chapter 446. Junior Sister Qing is too good at comforting people. Entering the trash class means they're trash. Just based on them, they want to enter the top 10 of the genius list? Dream on. He sneered and got up. Okay, the show is over. I still have a duel with a junior brother, so I won't stay here and waste my time. As he spoke, he glanced at Luo Qingtong with a cold smile and strode away. That arrogant appearance simply angered Chu Wenhao to the point of exploding. Damn, who do you think you are? Chu Wenhao looked at the direction Zhang Haoping left with a burst of anger. Isn't it just the top 10 of the genius list? What's there to be arrogant about? I will definitely surpass him in the future. Good, you have ambition. I have faith in you, good luck. Luo Qingtong patted his shoulder and looked in the direction Zhang Haoping left. No one knew that just now, her 5 fingers moved slightly. A faintly discernible force had already shot out and entered Zhang Haoping's body. The latter was unaware and directly left. Junior sister Luo, don't blame senior brother Zhang. Sure, Qingqing looked at Luo Qingtong and smiled. He's just a bit impulsive and straightforward. He didn't mean to offend you. Impulsive and straightforward? So, it was true that she was trash? It was just that she said it at an inappropriate time? She was really very straightforward. Luo Qingtong looked at the fake smile on Sure Qingqing's face and laughed softly. Of course, I won't bicker with senior brother Zhang. She just wanted to take revenge. These two people didn't think that things would be over just because they set her up like this, right? Although she took the initiative to jump into the pit, it didn't mean that she would let the other party set her up and not fight back. Luo Qingtong looked at Sure Qingqing with a smile. The latter looked at the brilliant smile on her face and inexplicably felt uncomfortable. They were clearly the ones who set up Luo Qingtong, so why didn't the other party feel angry? Instead, it seemed like they had helped her a lot. Sure, Qingqing frowned, and the uncomfortable feeling in her heart became more serious. She had actually made other preparations. He was just waiting for Luo Qingtong to refuse to accept the results of the class assignment and make trouble in public. This way, she could openly make a move against Luo Qingtong and use this opportunity to kick her out of the Tianyu Branch Academy, trampling her to the bottom of the mud. However, Luo Qingtong didn't do what she expected. This made Sure Qingqing quite depressed. It was as if you had prepared a big move and were waiting to knock your opponent down. But in the end, your opponent didn't even take your move. Sure, Qingqing frowned. If Luo Qingtong wasn't angry, then her following arrangements wouldn't be needed. But it didn't matter. In any case, he was already in the lower class. She would never be able to make a name for herself there. If he wanted to deal with her, there would be plenty of opportunities. Thinking of this, Sure Qingqing's heart immediately felt comfortable. It's good that junior sister Luo doesn't mind. She stood up gracefully and said, I still have some things to do, so I won't stay here any longer. Juniors, I'll take my leave now. Sure Qingqing's words caused a sound of pity to come from all around. It was rare to see the goddess of the Tianyu Branch Academy come out, but they didn't expect the other party to leave so soon. Everyone felt that it was a pity and rushed to talk to Sure Qingqing. Seeing Sure Qingqing being surrounded by people, Luo Qingtong smiled wickedly. Senior sister Sure, take care. You must take care. Otherwise, how could you watch a good show? Sure Qingqing very much enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by people, worshipped and sought after. She carried the demeanor of a goddess and greeted the many new students as she slowly left. Suddenly, Chapter 447. A scream could be heard all of a sudden. A freshman who had gathered in front of Sure Qingqing was looking at her in horror. Senior Sure, your face. He raised his hand and pointed at her face. The latter didn't understand and was about to ask when she suddenly felt an itch on her face. She immediately raised her hand to scratch it. With this grab, the new student instantly fell backwards onto the ground and scrambled to run away. As he ran, he cried out in horror, "Monster!" Even though he knew that the person opposite him was a goddess, sure Ching, and not some demon or ghost. The visual impact of an extremely beautiful person turning into an extremely ugly person was too strong. This freshman simply couldn't withstand this shock and was so scared that he wet his pants on the spot. Following his voice, everyone's gaze also turned towards Sure Ching. The moment they saw it, everyone's faces instantly turned into a palette of colors. It was extremely colorful. Needless to say, it was extremely exciting. What appeared in their line of sight was a terrifying woman whose entire body was covered with blisters. Her face and body were filled with huge blisters one after another, and she looked like a toad. Especially that face, which was filled with huge red bumps one after another, made her look like a pig's head that had been stung by a hornet. However, Sure Ching was completely unaware of it. When everyone looked over, she even smiled at them. With this smile, everyone instantly knew why that freshman screamed so tragically just now. Can you imagine the feeling of a huge pig's head or a toad smiling at you? Especially when the other party was so charming just now and had the posture of a goddess. There would be no harm if there was no comparison. Everyone looked at the ugly pig's head opposite them, but still had to act like a peerless beauty monster. Instantly, their stomachs churned, and the expression on their faces couldn't tell if they were more frightened or disgusted. Blurg! Someone couldn't help but vomit. At this moment, even if Sure Ching didn't feel anything, she could tell from everyone's frightened and disgusted gazes that it was because of her. What's wrong? She raised her hand to touch her face. Is there something on her face? However, just as she raised her hand, she realized that there were huge blisters on her arm. Instantly, Sure Ching almost fainted from the shock of that terrifying scene. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and frantically touched her face. With this touch, he instantly felt a bunch of big bumps. In an instant, Sure Ching screamed. She looked at all the people who were looking at her in horror or disgust and ran away screaming. On the first day of school, Sure Ching's reputation as the goddess of Tianyu was completely destroyed. In the future, even if she regained her original appearance, when others saw her face, the first thing that came to their minds would still be this toad-like face full of red bumps. It was fine if he wasn't disgusted to the point of vomiting, but how could he go against his conscience and call her a goddess? From today onwards, most people would probably take a detour when they saw her, so as not to recall today's terrible experience. As for Sure Ching, other than her strength that was ranked in the top 10 of the genius ranking, there was nothing else that could be related to the title of a goddess. Sure Ching screamed and ran away. She was so ashamed that she wanted to die. Chapter 448. Oh my God, that's so scary. How did Senior Sister Sure become like this? It looks like she's been contaminated by something dirty or poisoned. Everyone guessed. The instructors came back to their senses and hurriedly asked the pharmacist to check on Sure Ching. They still cared about this genius student who was likely to enter the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin in the end-of-year examination. They didn't want anything to happen to her. However, the news of Sure Ching's disfigurement and transformation into a giant toad also spread widely in Tianyu Branch Academy. The girls in the elite class who were suppressed by Sure Ching's reputation were very happy to spread the news and let more people know about it. They wanted to let everyone know about Sure Ching's embarrassing incident. While Sure Ching was in trouble, Zhang Haoping and a junior from the advanced class were standing on the battle platform of Tianyu Branch Academy. They were preparing for a practical battle. Below the battle platform was a group of students who had come to watch and learn. As one of the top 10 students on the genius ranking, Zhang Haoping rarely challenged anyone to a battle. However, the young man in front of him was the son of an old friend of his teacher. Zhang Haoping naturally had to treat him better. He was the one who had suggested this duel of mentorship. After the instructional battle was announced, many people instantly received the news and rushed over, wanting to witness the battle. Most of them were students from the elite and advanced classes. Those of the lower level would not even be qualified to enter the battle arena. Come on, Junior. You don't need to hold back. Go all out and show me your strength. In the battle platform, Jean Halping crossed his arms and looked at the young man in front of him indifferently. The latter was so excited that his face turned red. He hurriedly nodded and said, "Okay, Senior, I'll do my best. Please enlighten me, Senior." As he said that, he got into a fighting stance. Jean Halping just nodded at him indifferently. "Okay, let's begin." He looked very proud. As a genius student who ranked 5th on the genius ranking, he had the right to be proud. The people around him didn't think there was anything wrong with his arrogance. The bigger fist was the truth. This was the same everywhere. "Okay, Senior brother, be careful." As the youth spoke, he moved with a swoosh. Boom! He waved his fist and instantly attacked Jean Halping. Jean Halping's posture was casual as he raised his strength to block. However, right at this moment, he suddenly noticed that something was wrong. Just as he raised his strength, the strength in his body seemed to leak and instantly disappeared without a trace. If Jean Halping had seen Luo Xinning, he would know that his situation was exactly the same as Luo Xinning's when she was disfigured. Luo Qingtong's qi silently hit a certain point in his body, triggering all the hidden dangers he had accumulated over the years. This method did not harm the body, nor was it aggressive. Therefore, Jean Halping didn't notice anything. But when he fought, he would discover that the strength in his body had instantly disappeared, although this power would return in the future. But now it was gone. Bang! The youth's punch landed squarely on his face. Jean Halping didn't even have the chance to dodge. His nose was instantly broken by the punch. Chapter 449. The surroundings were completely silent. Oh my God! Jean Halping actually didn't manage to dodge that punch. Everyone around was stunned, especially those elite class students who came to spectate the battle. They studied that youth's attack from top to bottom, left to right. They realized that the other party's attack was really ordinary. With their abilities, they had tens of ways to block the other party's attack, but Jean Halping actually didn't manage to block it? Was this a joke? Everyone stared with their eyes wide open, their faces filled with disbelief. That youth on the stage was also stunned. Just at this moment, an elite class student slapped his thigh fiercely. "I know," he cried out loudly. "Senior brother Jean is doing this for the sake of this little brother." He purposely withdrew all the energy in his body and used his powerless body to battle this junior brother so that he could better feel his attack and then give him better guidance. As soon as he said this, everyone instantly came to a realization. That's right, Jean Halping indeed didn't use any energy. Who would have thought? He valued this junior brother so much that he actually didn't hesitate to make such a sacrifice. The group of people looked at that youth on the stage with unspeakable envy and jealousy. The latter had long been touched by this sudden happiness and was in a complete mess. Senior brother Jean was really too nice. Who said that senior brother Jean was arrogant and liked to look down on people? Stand out. I definitely won't beat him to death. Where else could I find such a nice person like senior brother Jean? For me, he didn't hesitate to sacrifice his energy to be a meat bag. Senior brother, don't worry, I will definitely fight properly. I will let you clearly feel where my problem lies. I will definitely not let your painstaking efforts go to waste. Saying that, as though he was injected with chicken blood, he instantly charged towards Jean Halping. The latter had just had his nose broken and had used up all his willpower to stop himself from crying out and losing his composure on the spot. However, before he could call for a halt, the youth who had been provoked into the arena had already charged over in a frenzy. In an instant, Jean Halping was drowned by that torrential storm of attacks. At this moment, Jean Halping couldn't hold it in, and that miserable cry instantly filled the entire battle arena. By the time the people around him and the young man who had agreed to the duel felt that something was wrong, he was already lying on the ground, breathing out more than in. He was a genius ranked 5th on the genius ranking, yet he was beaten up by a junior who was weaker than him. He was screaming miserably and lying on the arena like a dead dog. In an instant, everyone was dumbfounded. especially that elite class student who had said that John Hauping had intentionally sacrificed himself to guide that youth. His entire being was going crazy. He hurriedly ran away before anyone noticed him. When John Hauping was in trouble, Luo Qingtong and Chu Wenhao were already on their way to the lower-class dormitory. Luo Qingtong had planned to go alone. However, Chu Wenhao was not at ease. He was afraid that someone would come and make trouble for her. Luo Qingtong was alone and helpless, so he insisted on sending her here. Luo Qingtong didn't care. Although she was clear that no one could bully her, she did not reject Chu Wenhao's good intentions. The two of them went to Luo Qingtong's dormitory together. In the room, there was already a timid little girl there. Chapter 450. Hi. Hello. I'm Su Xiao. She looked at Chu Wenhao with fear in her eyes, but she still mustered up the courage to greet them. It was obvious that she was a very shy and bashful girl. She was soft and harmless. Luo Qingtong looked at the little girl in front of her, and 3 words suddenly flashed in her mind. Little white rabbit. Very good. She was very satisfied with this roommate. Finally, she didn't have to deal with those messy things anymore. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's eyes softened. Hello, I'm Luo Qingtong. Chu Wenhao also greeted the other party. Su Xiao was very shy. She nodded and walked away. Luo Qingtong put away her things. Although they were called things, they were actually just some simple luggage. Her real good things were all in the trash ring. However, something like a Sumeru spatial spiritual tool, even if it was the lowest grade, was not something that the students of Tianyu branch could possess. Only the people of the Holy Dynasty's big forces could have it. Therefore, in order to not attract attention, Luo Qingtong brought some simple luggage to fool people. Chu Wenhao didn't stay for long and quickly left. Luo Qingtong unpacked her luggage while letting Little Pig and Little Ming zoom out for some fresh air. However, fiancé, fifth prince, the person who was let out had a cold expression. Her adorable face was now filled with cold anger. Little Pig was playing dead on the side with its 4 hooves facing the sky. It didn't even dare to fart. Oh my God, if I don't play dead now, I'll probably die for real. I don't want to die so worthlessly. Just when Little Pig was playing dead, Yi Qianqian's anger was about to burst out. This woman actually has a fiancé. He had never heard her mention it before. Yi Qianqian's mood at this moment was like she was about to explode. He had endured all the way from the registration to now. If not for the fact that he didn't have any strength in his body, he would have turned the entire Tianyu branch upside down as soon as he heard that Luo Qingtong had a fiancé. He's just a piece of trash with one-sided love. Don't bother about him, Luo Qingtong said without raising her head. Whenever she heard anything related to Yu Wenma, she would get angry. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold when she thought of how the other party refused to cancel the engagement and even caused some rotten peach blossoms to cause trouble for her. If it wasn't for the Luo clan, she would have flipped the Tianyu royal palace upside down. Unwilling to break off the engagement, she forced them to break off the engagement. Luo Qingtong's coldness and killing intent soared. Sensing the coldness and murderous intent from her body, Yi Qianqian's explosive anger immediately subsided. It's fine as long as this woman doesn't like him. Otherwise, even if he had to destroy the heavens and earth, he would still snatch her back. Even if she hated him, this woman was his. It could only belong to him. Anyone who covets her must die. Then why didn't you break off the engagement? He fumed. His heart was still very unhappy. If he knew Tianyu's royal family had a marriage agreement with her, he would have slapped the entire royal family into ashes. He wouldn't have caused more trouble for himself. I can't get rid of this sticky candy, Luo Qingtong said angrily. But soon, when she learned the inscription technique and combined it with the weapon she made, she could torture Tianyu's royal family in any way she wanted. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. Chapter 451. Oh no! Su Xiao, who was too embarrassed to run out, suddenly ran in, gasping for breath. That your companion? She looked at Luo Qingtong anxiously and pointed outside. She panted and couldn't even finish her sentence. He, Luo Qingtong's expression changed. Chu Wenhao, what happened to him? Where is he? Bring me there, Luo Qingtong said. With a turn of her body, she brought Luo Qingtong up and dashed outside. In the Tianyu Branch Academy, in a small forest, not far from the lower-class dormitory, two intermediate-class students surrounded Chu Wenhao with a group of people. You're Chu Wenhao? The youth with a long face on the left looked at him and sneered. How dare a person from a small, inferior country be so arrogant? Don't you know where you are? I think you're tired of living. His face was full of disdain. For people from aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire like them, Chu Wenhao, a student from an inferior country, was like a weed on the ground, not worth mentioning. He dared to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was looking for trouble. Who didn't know that the imperial family of Tianyu didn't like Luo Qingtong? The seventh princess hated her to the core. Moreover, she offended Zhang Haoping, the fifth student on the genius list. In Tianyu Branch, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with them and make trouble for Luo Qingtong. But she was the fiancée of the fifth prince. They couldn't go too far, otherwise it would be slapping the imperial family in the face. Therefore, they stared at Chu Wenhao, who told him to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was asking for it. Go, teach him a lesson. Break the meridians in one of his arms and legs, then kick him out of Tianyu Branch. The intermediate class student with triangular eyes on the right sneered. They had come at someone's behest. The other party was from a side branch of Tianyu's royal family. As long as they crippled Chu Wenhao and kicked him out of the Tianyu Branch College, even if they were expelled for the Tianyu Branch College, their families would still have a meteoric rise under Chu Wenhao's protection. Their talents were only average to begin with. If they continued to cultivate in the Tianyu Branch School, they would only be average. If he could get the other party's protection and promise to raise his family status in the Tianyu Empire, what was there to hesitate about? Immediately, a group of people surrounded Chu Wenhao. You guys! Chu Wenhao looked at the people surrounding him and was shocked. He didn't think that these people would be so bold as to be so heavy-handed in the Tianyu Branch Academy. One had to know that killing and personal fights were absolutely prohibited in the academy. Once discovered, they would be expelled from the school. However, these people didn't seem to care about this at all. The moment they arrived, they gave out ruthless orders. After the triangular-eyed youth finished speaking, a group of people rushed towards Chu Wenhao. Bang, bang, bang. A group of people started fighting. The two intermediate class students didn't make a move. They stood outside to prevent Chu Wenhao from escaping. Now was the registration period, so there weren't many people walking around the school. Moreover, they were in a remote forest. Once they crippled Chu Wenhao's meridians, it wouldn't matter even if they were discovered. These people's attacks were very ruthless. Just as Chu Wenhao was in dire straits and found it difficult to defend himself, he was ruthlessly knocked to the ground. Chapter 452. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in the small forest. Bang, bang, bang. She jumped into the battle circle, and in an instant, those who were besieging Chu Wenhao fell to the ground. The two intermediate class students who were guarding the periphery were caught off guard. By the time they reacted, Luo Qingtong had already taken care of their followers. The two of them looked at the young girl in front of them angrily. Why would Luo Qingtong appear here? They clearly saw her and Chu Wenhao separated, and the latter went back alone. That was why they blocked her here. Luo Qingtong, get out of the way. This Chu Wenhao has offended us. He must pay the price. The long-faced youth said with a calm face. The triangular-eyed youth beside him also looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold face. The two of them were very surprised by Luo Qingtong's appearance. But even so, they must teach Chu Wenhao a lesson. Otherwise, if they missed this opportunity, they would be vigilant. If they wanted to attack Chu Wenhao again and cripple him, it would not be possible. Thinking like this, the two of them were very unyielding. Oh, then what if I don't let you go? Luo Qingtong looked at the two of them coldly. She swept a glance at Chu Wenhao, who was lying on the ground. Seeing the injuries on his body and the traces of being stepped on the back of his hand, the bloody light in her eyes flickered in an instant. Who told you to touch him? Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Chu Wenhao had just entered the academy and had not even returned to his own dormitory. How could there be people who specially blocked this place to wait for him? Offended them? Luo Qingtong did not believe a single word of these people's words. Her gaze swept across this remote little forest. If not for Su Xiaoxiao coincidentally seeing this group of people blocking Chu Wenhao's way into this little forest and seeing that they did not have good intentions, she quickly ran over to inform her. She was afraid that if something happened to Chu Wenhao here, no one would know. How could these people target Chu Wenhao for no reason? The only possibility was that they were targeting her. They wanted to attack him by dealing with Chu Wenhao. It had to be said that this method had successfully angered her. Luo Qingtong didn't have any other problems, but she was protective. He was very protective. Anyone who dared to touch her people would die. Even if he didn't die, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at these people, thinking about how to deal with them. That long-faced youth was infuriated by her words. Luo Qingtong, don't be so shameless. Since you insist on getting involved in this mess, we'll fulfill your wish. The two of them looked at each other and immediately reached a consensus. If Luo Qingtong wanted to court death, then they wouldn't stop her. Anyway, they didn't take the initiative to attack Luo Qingtong. She was the one who came to their door and bumped into their attack. Even if she was accidentally injured, she couldn't blame them. Was that not the case? Maybe they could even gain more benefits because of this matter. The two of them thought so and instantly laughed sinisterly as they attacked Luo Qingtong. Rumble. The two's movements were very ruthless. There was a faint sound of wind and thunder as they attacked Luo Qingtong directly. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with blood-red light. In an instant, she had locked on to their fatal points. She just needed to hit them and let them quietly wait for their deaths. At that time, no one would be able to find out that it was her. Chapter 453. Bah! Where did this bastard come from? He actually dares to bully people here. While speaking, a tower-like figure suddenly appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the two youths were blocked in an instant. Luo Qingtong also retracted the power that she was about to use. Yuanhu, the two intermediate class students who were forced to retreat, looked at the sturdy youth who appeared in front of them, and their faces instantly turned ugly. Yuanhu, Yuan little tyrant. The other party is the tyrant of the imperial capital. In the circle of aristocratic families of the same age, almost no one dares to provoke him, because he was born with divine strength and also activated the petrification soul seal. If not for the fact that his petrification soul seal was a trash soul seal, it would be useless after everyone advanced to the martial lord realm. His future was absolutely limitless. Because it was a trash soul seal and his martial arts talent was extremely poor, he could only rely on brute force to fight. Therefore, after confirming that he would not be able to advance any further in the future, he was thrown into the trash class to dawdle. But even so, this little tyrant is a strange existence in the Tianyu branch that is difficult to provoke. There is no other reason. With his innate divine strength combined with the petrification soul seal, even a martial lord would not be able to easily break through his defense. Therefore, although the little tyrant may not have any opportunities to advance in the future, but when it comes to oppressing low-level warriors, it is a sure thing. When the two intermediate class students saw that he came out to meddle in other people's business, their faces instantly turned green. Little tyrant, this is a misunderstanding. They just wanted to teach that advanced class student called Chu Wenhao a lesson. Who doesn't know that Yuan who regards the lower class as his territory? Whoever dares to bully the people of the lower class will be beaten back by him. How unlucky were they to meet him? The two intermediate class students also had a painful expression on their faces. They wanted to explain, but Yuan who did not listen to them and directly rushed up to beat them up. Scram! Do you really think my eyes are blind? The next time you dare to bully our lower class people, I will kill you. Yuan who said as he kicked each of them and directly sent them flying. The latter two did not dare to resist. Of course, they could not resist and could only leave dejectedly. When he left, he didn't even dare to let out a fart. Looking at their departing figures, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. The blood-red light in her eyes flickered, bloodthirsty and cold. "Are you that Luo Qingtong?" After teaching those people a lesson, Yuanhu turned around and looked at her arrogantly. "The words you said during the registration were so damn satisfying. Just because of those words, I'll take care of you from now on." He patted his chest and said, "If anyone dares to bully you in the future, just tell me." As Yuanhu was speaking, he suddenly smelled a trace of medicinal fragrance. Luo Qingtong had taken out a bottle of medicinal liquid for Chu Wenhao to drink to prevent any hidden injuries in his body. Little Overlord Yuan's eyes lit up as soon as the medicinal fragrance entered his nose. He had been beaten up by his father, Great General Yuan, ever since he was a child. He could tell whether the medicine was good or bad just by smelling it. This trace of medicinal liquid's fragrance was definitely a good medicine. Who would have thought that the other party would have such a good item on him? Yuanhu reached out to grab it without hesitation. "Hey, wait. It's too wasteful to let him use this medicinal liquid. You should give this bottle to me as a filial gift. Let him use other medicine." Yuan, who was used to being overbearing. How could the title of Little Overlord Yuan be fake? In the entire Tianyu Imperial City, other than a few people's things that he could not touch, he could snatch the other people's things however he wanted. Now that he had taken a fancy to Luo Qingtong's medicinal liquid, he naturally did not hesitate to snatch it back. He had helped them, so wasn't it normal to give this medicinal liquid to him? Anyway, that kid wouldn't die, so what medicinal liquid couldn't he use? However, he did not know that those people had the intention to cripple Chu Wenhao. The latter's meridians had already suffered some injuries in the fight just now. Luo Qingtong took out this medicinal liquid to treat the injuries to his meridians. Chapter 454. The next second, she suddenly grabbed Yuanhu's hand and pulled out a silver hairpin from her hairband. With a bang, it pierced through his wrist and nailed his hand to the ground. "You can have my things if I give it to you. If I don't give it to you." Luo Qingtong looked at him coldly. "Then you can't snatch it. Do you understand?" "Yes. Yes." Yuanhu wanted to curse, but he didn't know why. When he raised his head and met Luo Qingtong's eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly had a feeling that Luo Qingtong was being merciful to him. Otherwise, his fate would not be as simple as having his hand nailed to the ground. In fact, it was true. If not for Yuanhu's meddling, he didn't know what would happen to him. Just look at Master Lu, who dared to exchange Luo Qingtong's medicine in the Black Field. Yuanhu's fate would not be any better than his. How could Luo Qingtong's things be so easy to snatch? Strangely enough, when Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin was inserted into Yuanhu's wrist, there was no blood at all. Moreover, it didn't hurt at all. It was as if it wasn't his wrist. It just made him unable to exert any strength. When Chu Wenhao finished drinking the medicine, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and took back the silver hairpin. In an instant, Yuanhu regained his strength. How did you do it?" He looked at his wrist curiously and found that other than a bloody hole, his wrist was not injured at all. What was going on? Moreover, his petrification social defense had no effect on her attack. Yuanhu was shocked. Just now, he was shocked by Luo Qingtong's gaze. Only now did he react. Wasn't the process of Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin too smooth? One must know that even if a martial lord expert could temporarily release his inner strength, it would not be so easy to break his defense. Yuanhu stared at Luo Qingtong with his eyes wide open. The latter was too lazy to explain to him that his attack just now had actually penetrated the flaw in his defense and directly nailed into the space between the tendons in his wrist. That area was equivalent to an empty crevice. Apart from a bit of flesh and blood on the surface, it was completely harmless to him. This was also because Yuan, who had helped her before. Of course, Luo Qingtong didn't need his help. However, she had always been a person who repaid kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred. Yuan, who wouldn't go so far as to hurt her, As for the others, it was a different story. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed as she thought of the people who had come to attack Chu Wenhao. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face. Tianyu Branch Institution. On the way to the elite class dormitory area, the group of people who had gone to find trouble with Chu Wenhao was now limping, looking indescribably wretched. Hiss! Ouch! Damn it! Yuan Hu, that lunatic. He was so ruthless. The long-faced youth rubbed his wound and hissed in pain as he cursed. He still wants to protect that Luo Qingtong. He really doesn't know his own worth. Does he know how many people want Luo Qingtong to be unlucky? Just based on his... Before he could finish his words, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Is that so? I also want to know how many people want me to be unlucky, especially... Chapter 455. Luo Qingtong. Seeing the girl appear in front of them, the long-faced youth and the people beside him were stunned at first, then said with disdain, "Even if you know, so what? Luo Qingtong, you are just a daughter of a small, inferior country's marquee house, with the future status of the fifth prince's wife. Even if you know who is against you, what can you do to them?" Chi. As he said this, he loudly sneered. The people around him also followed and laughed loudly. Is that so? In this ear-piercing laughter, the smile on Luo Qingtong's lips became deeper and deeper, more and more intense. Then let's see if I could do anything to them. As she said this, the aura around her burst out. Level 9, Great Martial General Realm. In this period of time, Luo Qingtong had completely comprehended all the insights from the battle with Patriarch Fei. Her strength directly rose from level 7 Great Martial General Realm to level 9. The reason why she did not advance to Martial Marquis Realm, it was because she was still waiting for the perfect moment of advancement. In the cultivation of a martial artist, the advancement of every realm was extremely important. The more solid the foundation was, the easier it would be to advance in cultivation in the future. The increase in battle strength would also be more powerful than martial artists of the same level. The same was true for spirit practitioners. There was a perfect state for every breakthrough of a major realm. That was the current realm, unable to advance, unable to be raised, the peak of battle strength. That kind of advancement, once the realm was crossed, could immediately crush those of the same level. Therefore, even if Luo Qingtong could already advance to Martial Marquis Realm, she had been suppressing herself and was unwilling to advance. She wanted to have a perfect realm advancement every time. In any case, at her age, level 9 Great Martial General Realm was enough to shock people. Not to mention, Luo Qingtong's true strength was enough to kill any Martial King Realm expert. If her true battle strength was made public, who knew how many people would be frightened? This was an absolute monster. Not to mention Luo Qingtong's terrifying alchemy skills. Just her strength alone was enough to shock the world. The Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy recruited heaven-grade geniuses every year, but there was almost no one who could surpass Luo Qingtong's strength. With her strength and battle strength, once it was leaked, it would immediately attract the competition of the Sacred Academies. She was afraid that all the major forces in the Holy Dynasty would rush to recruit her under their banner upon hearing the news. As for Luo Qingtong's identity of a small inferior country, no one would care. With the identity and status of those forces, a casual word, Easternly country, and a Luo family status would immediately rise. It was not impossible to become an empire. However, that was based on the fact that Luo Qingtong only had this much strength. But in fact, Luo Qingtong had too many abilities and secrets. Array formation, refining pill, refining, and the inheritance of immortal palace. If any of these things were revealed, it would be enough to shock the various forces. If they knew that Luo Qingtong had all of these abilities, they would be shocked. Then they would not only want to recruit Luo Qingtong, but also want to imprison her and take her for their own. In her previous life, the various forces, and the ancient martial ability world's various encirclement and suppression of her were still vivid in her mind. Luo Qingtong would never easily reveal her abilities and identity. But now, Luo Qingtong sneered at the crowd in front of her who were completely stunned because of excessive shock. The smile on her lips was so bloodthirsty and enchanting. Chapter 456. The long-faced youth and the people around him all widened their eyes in shock. Ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. Luo Qingtong's strength was unexpectedly at the ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. This strength in the Tianyu Branch Academy may not be the strongest. After all, in the academy, there were some students who had been in the academy for a long time, Martial Marquis and Martial Kings. But Luo Qingtong was a new student who had just entered the academy. Her strength had already reached the ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. And this ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm was not an ordinary ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. The group of people felt the pressure coming from Luo Qingtong's body, and in an instant, the aura around them became somewhat stagnant. This was clearly a pressure that only Martial Marquis experts could have. Obviously, Luo Qingtong's strength was enough to advance to the Martial Marquis realm. It was just that she suppressed it and did not advance. 15 years old Martial Marquis realm. Back then, even the fifth prince was not so amazing, right? Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at Luo Qingtong. The expression on their faces was both shocked and at a loss. Wasn't it said that Luo Qingtong was only the legitimate daughter of a low-level marquis, and that her talent and strength were only average, and that she was not worthy of the empire's fifth prince? But now that they saw Luo Qingtong, which part of her talent and strength was average? Which part of her was not worthy of the fifth prince? Her talent clearly surpassed that of the fifth prince. The group of people's faces turned pale. Suddenly, a youth seemed to realize something and turn around to run. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. It's the two of them. The two of them ordered us to do this. He pointed at the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth at the front and was about to run out. However, the surrounding environment was constantly changing. No matter how he ran, it seemed that he was in the same place. He was clearly still in the Tianyu Branch Academy, but it seemed that he had gone to another time and space. Array. When Luo Qingtong appeared, she had already set up an array in the vicinity, enclosing this group of people and herself in an independent space. That was why she was able to display her strength so brazenly. Luo Qingtong, that youth and everyone else's complexion had completely changed, especially the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth. The two of them were considered the planners of this operation. At this moment, their faces were full of panic. Even the stupidest person could see that Luo Qingtong was going to attack them. Not to mention, they weren't stupid. Luo Qingtong, let us go. We will tell you everything. I guarantee that I won't hide anything. They begged for mercy with panicked and fearful expressions. However, really? Unfortunately, I don't want to listen to you anymore. She naturally had a way to find out the other party's identity and then give him a big gift. Luo Qingtong looked at them indifferently and waved her hand. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong flicked pills into their mouths. Before anyone could react, they were already forced to swallow the pill. What did you make us eat? The long-faced youth's complexion was extremely pale. He lay on the ground, desperately digging at his throat, trying to spit out the pill he had just swallowed. However, how could the pill refined by Luo Qingtong give anyone the chance to spit it out? The moment it entered their mouths, it had already turned into medicinal power and entered their bodies. Zombie. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes at them. The pill I gave you is called Zombie. Enjoy the surprise that this pill has brought to you, including the person behind you. Want to deal with her? Very well. Let's see if they can handle this surprise that I've given them. Chapter 457. A burst of laughter came from the dormitory area of the advanced class. In a courtyard for the advanced class students to rest and play, a group of young men and women in luxurious clothes were gathered there. Judging from their clothes, they were all members of the royal family of Tianyu. Some of them were even members of the aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire. At this moment, they were chatting and laughing together. A young man with a feminine face, eyebrows slightly drooping, and a somewhat gloomy expression, was currently surrounded by the crowd. Huh, Zhao, did you really send someone to deal with Luo Qingtong's follower? A young master beside him laughed. I didn't expect that. You acted so quickly and directly took action. What else could it be? The gloomy Zhao played with the wine glass in his hand and sneered at them. If I didn't act quickly, you would be the ones to take action. Everyone knew that the seventh princess hated Luo Qingtong. Whoever could make her unhappy without damaging the royal family's reputation would be favored by the seventh princess. Among the crowd, there were countless people who wanted to curry favor with the seventh princess. The men wanted to please the fifth prince's younger sister. As for the woman, she wanted to curry favor with the fifth prince through the seventh princess. Ahem. His words were so straightforward that the young master didn't know how to respond. Indeed, he had already arranged everything and was prepared to take action against Luo Qingtong tomorrow. But he didn't expect Zhao to act so quickly and be ahead of them. Alas, Luo Qingtong had just arrived at Tianyu Branch School. The only person she was close to was Chu Wenhao. Crippling him would definitely hurt Luo Qingtong and make her suffer. But Zhao beat them to it. They didn't know how long it would take for them to deal with Luo Qingtong in the future. Although Luo Qingtong was in this school, and there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with her in the future, the person who showed up in front of the seventh princess first would leave the deepest impression on her. The group of aristocratic young masters and collateral members of the royal family instantly felt that they had missed the best opportunity. In the future, when he showed his face in front of the seventh princess, he was afraid that he would not be able to compare to Zhao. Feeling their envious, jealous, and hateful gazes, Crown Prince Zhao was very pleased with himself. He had already found out that Chu Wenhao's spot was given to him by Luo Qingtong. He concluded that the other party had a close relationship with Luo Qingtong, so he made arrangements in advance to deal with him on the first day of school. Now it seemed that what he had done was right. When his men crippled Chu Wenhao, the seventh princess would be overjoyed and praise him greatly. At that time, not only would he be able to use this opportunity to get close to the seventh princess, he might even have the chance to impress the fifth prince. At that time, he might even be able to raise his status as the heir of the Zhao clan even further. As he thought of this, he became even more complacent. At this moment, someone came to report, "Your Highness, those people have returned to report on their mission." Oh, Crown Prince Zhao's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked around at everyone and saw that they had all turned their attention to him. He immediately laughed proudly and said, "It seems that the matter has been settled. Invite all of them here and tell me in detail about the situation at that time. Those who speak well will be heavily rewarded." Chapter 458. Looking at the people standing in front of him, Zhao frowned. Why do they look so strange? He saw that the intermediate class students' limbs were stiff and their eyes were lifeless. It looked like they were about to die. Zhao's heart was filled with anger. How could these people be so useless against a new student who had just entered the school? Looking at his appearance, he couldn't have been beaten up by Chu Wenhao, right? They were so useless. Zhao subconsciously wanted to vent his anger. But when he thought of the disciples around him, he immediately suppressed the anger in his heart. Tell me how you dealt with Chu Wenhao, and how did Luo Qingtong feel sad? He glanced at the people around him and said proudly. He said that after crippling Chu Wenhao, he would lure Luo Qingtong over and let her see the fate of her followers. All of this was naturally to please the seventh princess. As soon as he said this, there was a burst of laughter. That Luo Qingtong must be very sad. I heard that Chu Wenhao's grandfather treated her well when they were in Dongli country. A delicate and pretty young lady from an aristocratic family covered her mouth and said with a smile, "Er Zhao's move is good. Cripple him and then call Luo Qingtong over." It's best to tell her the reason why Chu Wenhao was crippled. At that time, who knows how much regret and pain she will feel. A disciple from a branch of the imperial family said. That's right. On the other side, a young lady from an aristocratic family gently waved the round fan in her hand and raised her eyebrows. After crippling his meridians, that Chu Wenhao can no longer stay in Tianyu Branch. Even the trash class won't accept a cripple like him. When he is expelled, I'm afraid that Luo Qingtong's heart will be even more unbearable. If that Luo Qingtong's psychological endurance is slightly weaker, she will be depressed and vomit blood. At this point, she chuckled and covered her mouth with the fan. If the seventh princess knew about this, she will be very happy. Er Zhao's move is brilliant, but it's also because we didn't catch up. Otherwise, we might not lose to you. The group of people talked all at once, discussing all kinds of methods they would use to torture Chu Wenhao and deal with Luo Qingtong. Each method was more vicious than the other. They were talking in full swing, but they didn't notice that the group of people standing in front of them had already made a move. There wasn't a trace of expression on the ghostly pale faces. The young man with a long face led the intermediate class students at this moment suddenly raised their heads. In the next second, they suddenly howled and pounced like ferocious beasts. They used their hands and feet to rush at the gathered members of the royal family and aristocratic families. Ah! Screams rang out. Those members of the royal family and aristocratic families who were chatting happily did not expect such a thing to happen. In an instant, they were pushed to the ground by the students of the intermediate class and were fiercely bitten. Even though they were stronger than the students of the intermediate class, they were caught off guard and had no time to react. Many of them had their flesh bitten off while they were still alive. That wasn't all. Those intermediate class students didn't seem to be afraid of death or pain. Once they caught someone, they would bite them to death. No matter how they attacked, it was useless. In just a moment, the courtyard that was filled with laughter just a moment ago turned into a terrifying azure field of flesh and bones flying. Chapter 459. When the mentors arrived, there were no longer any intact corpses in the courtyard. All the children of the royal family and aristocratic families who stayed in the courtyard were bitten into pieces, their flesh and blood flying everywhere. Among them, the one who died the most miserably was Er Zhao. At that time, he was sitting in the front, and those students of the intermediate class were all his people, so they were all standing in front of him. The moment the unforeseen event happened, he was torn into pieces in the midst of his screams. Zombie pills. In her previous life, Luo Qingtong was stolen from a terrorist organization. At that time, that organization wanted to capture her to do experiments, but she beat them at their own game and turned them upside down. After Luo Qingtong destroyed the other party's laboratory, she also notified the ex-country's government. Under the joint military force, to directly turn that organization upside down. Luo Qingtong easily took all the resources of that organization and calmly left. That zombie pill was obtained from that organization. Those who took that zombie pill would have their nerve centers cut off, their limbs stiff, their eyes dull, and they completely lose consciousness. The only thing that would be preserved was the order given by the person who gave the pill before their consciousness dissipated. Once triggered, they would fall into a state of madness. All their behavior patterns were the same as the zombies in Resident Evil, except that they weren't infectious. This was originally prepared by that terrorist organization to create panic, but Luo Qingtong used it on those students of the intermediate class. And the trigger that Luo Qingtong set for them was to attack anyone who emitted malicious intent towards her. Didn't those people say that she didn't know how many people wanted to deal with her? Sorry, she didn't need to know, because after today, those people would definitely be reduced by more than half. Luo Qingtong's way of dealing with problems was so simple and crude. Did they find her unpleasant to the eye? Did they want to make trouble for her? Except for a few big heads, she would take care of them herself. Those who followed the royal family of Tianyu and wanted to make trouble for her would all be eliminated by her. She had more important things to do at the Tianyu branch, so she didn't have time to play the childish plot of school bullying with them. Luo Qingtong didn't make a move, but once she made a move, it was shocking. Those who took the zombie pill completely lost their human consciousness and turned into monsters that didn't know pain and death. Their whole body strength were all strengthened and solidified. After becoming crazy, their strength directly soared. Coupled with the fact that they weren't afraid of death or pain, they instantly made those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong suffer a nightmarish treatment. In addition to those in the courtyard, those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong in the entire dormitory area of the entire advanced class would be sensed by the zombified students of the intermediate class and launch an attack. This disaster was only completely stopped when the teachers received the news and rushed over to help. But what had happened? It was irreversible. Almost 1/5 of the students in the advanced class were either dead or severely injured. Even those who didn't die had been traumatized and could no longer fight with others. Most of these people were from the big families and royal families of the Tianyu Empire. With so many students dead, the higher-ups of the academy were furious in order to investigate the truth. But what was there to investigate? The students of the intermediate class had all been turned into ashes, okay. Chapter 460. Luo Qingtong took a closer look at Song Cheng's teaching schedule. Song Cheng's teaching schedule was basically arranged for the last class in the afternoon. After a day of classes, all the classes would be over. However, Luo Qingtong looked at Song Cheng's attendance schedule for the first half of the year. Her lips twitched. She was about to ascend to the heavens. What the hell? This Song Cheng was so awesome that he couldn't be any more awesome. Luo Qingtong looked at the pages filled with red XXs, which meant that he didn't attend classes. She didn't know what to say. She calculated. In the entire first half of the year, Song Cheng only attended classes 3 times. In the entire first half of the year, he actually only attended 3 classes. How could such an unprofessional instructor stay in the Tianyu Branch Academy? Luo Qingtong looked at his outrageous attendance, and she was in a bad mood. She entered the lower class to get close to Song Cheng, a weirdo who basically didn't even leave his house. Now, he didn't even attend the classes arranged by the school. How was she going to get close to him and learn the inscription technique from him? Luo Qingtong stared at the red XXs on the page and seriously considered whether she should report this to the school. However, thinking about it, Song Cheng had been Tianyu Branch School for so long. If he dared to do this, he must have something to rely on. Maybe the school didn't even care about the lower class and just let them fend for themselves. This was troublesome. Luo Qingtong frowned and looked at the schedule in her hand. Tomorrow was the official start of classes. Logically speaking, all the teachers should be present. She would just wait and see. If Song Cheng didn't appear on such an important day tomorrow, she could only change her way of thinking. If she couldn't do it openly, then she could only do it secretly. With that thought, Luo Qingtong put away the schedule. The next day, she brought Yi Qianxian to class. The latter wore a small silver mask that covered half of his face. Although little Ming Zun's round face was soft and cute, it was still extraordinarily handsome. This mask was naturally made by Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian didn't want to stay in her sleeve pocket, and Luo Qingtong didn't want him to suffocate. However, Supreme Blackfield had never shown his face in front of others. Luo Qingtong didn't want little Ming Zun's face to be shown in front of others, so she made a small mask for him. The mask was of the same design as Luo Qingtong's Rakshasa ghost mask, but only half of it covered Yi Qianxian's face. It was half angel and half devil, but it didn't detract from his magnificent beauty. Instead, it made little Nether Venerable, who had a cold face, look even cuter. Luo Qingtong looked at his dignified expression and could not help but hug him and kiss him a few times. Little Nether Venerable glared at her. He couldn't break free from her demonic claws for a long time, so he could only let her do as she wished. This woman is really becoming more and more unreserved. However, although he thought so, his eyes were indescribably bright, and his lips were slightly raised. Luo Qingtong carried Yi Qianxian to the classroom of the lower class. Little Pig was sleeping soundly in her sleeve pocket. She hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days because of Yi Qianren. All right? Luo Qingtong walked into the classroom of the lower class and walked directly to her seat. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside the classroom. The figure was very fast, and Luo Qingtong was right in front of him. Chapter 461. Seeing his action, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned sharp, and she was ready to take action. Right at this moment, a cursing voice suddenly came in from outside. "Sima Ju, you bastard! How dare you run away?" As soon as the voice came out, Luo Qingtong instantly knew that the figure that rushed in wasn't coming for her. She immediately retracted the power that she was about to use. She hugged little Mingzun and turned around, dodging the figure that rushed over. The man had already noticed Luo Qingtong when he rushed over. However, the distance between them was too close, and he was running in a hurry, so he couldn't stop. When Luo Qingtong dodged, he also staggered forward 2 steps and stopped. When they passed by each other, his hand suddenly brushed against Luo Qingtong's arm. Instantly, Sima Ju's face changed. At the same time, Luo Qingtong also felt that something was wrong with her arm. Her arm, where the young man had brushed against her arm, was stained with a trace of poison. Just a light touch and a rub, and she was infected with such a potent poison. Luo Qingtong felt that the poison was quickly seeping into her limbs and bones, but she couldn't see anything wrong with her hand. Moreover, she didn't feel that the other party had any intention to poison her. With Luo Qingtong's behavior, it was impossible for anyone to poison her silently in front of her without letting her know. Was it unintentionally stained before he wiped it off just now? What's wrong with him? How could he carry such a strong poison on his body? Luo Qingtong looked up at the young man in front of her. At this glance, she found that the other party's whole body, including his face, was wrapped with a thick layer of cloth, which wrapped him tightly. Only a pair of dark, midnight eyes were exposed. That pair of eyes was extremely dark, and there was no light in the depths of the pupils, as if everything in the world were silent. "If you don't want anything to happen, go see a doctor quickly." Turning his head, Sima Ju strode away. He didn't want to see the disgust in the other party's eyes. He had touched her, so she must have been infected with his poison. When she realized that something was wrong with her body, she would curse him in disgust and anger. Sima Ju was already used to it. He was the cursed person. However, it seemed a little different this time. Sima Ju walked all the way to his seat and didn't hear any movement behind him. He couldn't help but look back and see that Luo Qingtong had already taken her seat. The poison in her body was gone. Sima Ju looked at Luo Qingtong's arm. The poisonous aura that he could see clearly was gone. Sima Ju was stunned. He looked at Luo Qingtong's arm and felt an indescribable sense of incredulity. How was this possible? No one knew the power of the poison in his body better than Sima Ju. Just a light touch with others would cause them to be infected with the poison. Even if he had wrapped his whole body with a thick layer of cloth, it couldn't stop the poison that grew stronger as he aged. And those poisons were extremely overbearing. Even if they were cured in time, they would feel uncomfortable for a while. How could the other party be fine? Sima Ju was shocked, but he didn't know that Luo Qingtong's shock was no less than his. 10,000 poison body. Chapter 462. After easily dispelling the poison in her arm, Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to scan Sima Ju's body. She immediately saw the strangeness in his body. This youth's body was actually filled with all kinds of toxins. These toxins were intertwined with each other, forming a strange balance. They wouldn't harm this body, but they could infect anyone who touched him with those toxins. Just some of them were enough to make those with lower strength unable to bear it. Luo Qingtong didn't expect to see this kind of physique here. She had only seen the description of the 10,000 poison body in the ancient records of those evil sects that she had destroyed. She had never seen it before. Legend has it that the 10,000 poison body was extremely powerful. A truly mature 10,000 poison body could extract the toxins in one's body at will, forming all kinds of toxins. Combined with martial skills, it was simply enough to kill anyone who touched it. Fighting above one's level was as easy as eating and drinking. However, it was clear that the youth's 10,000 poison body hadn't matured yet, and he was still unable to control this physique. Luo Qingtong was thinking when Yuan Little Tyrant's loud voice suddenly came from outside the door. F***CK. A bunch of trash. This daddy said that they're not allowed to cause trouble in the lower class. Each and every one of them ignored my words, simply asking for a beating. As he spoke, he cracked his knuckles and entered the classroom. Luo Qingtong saw that behind him, a group of people were limping and supporting each other as they left. It was obvious that they were the group that chased after Sima Ju just now. No wonder they suddenly didn't move. It turned out that they were blocked by Yuan Hu. The latter entered the classroom, looked up, and saw Luo Qingtong. He immediately walked over in large strides. Yuan Hu, what are you doing? Sitting next to Luo Qingtong was her roommate, Su Xiao. She looked at Yuan Hu, who was as sturdy as an iron tower, and her heart was timid and afraid. However, she still gathered her courage and stood in front of Luo Qingtong. She said to Yuan Hu, "The tutor will be here soon. You can't randomly hit people anymore. Go away, little white rabbit." Yuan Hu looked at her and rolled his eyes. If he wanted to make a move on them, these people from the lower class wouldn't be enough for him to crush them with one hand. "All right, I won't do anything to her," Yuan Hu said, and pushed away Su Xiao, who was standing in front of Luo Qingtong. Although he was an overlord, he would not go so far as to bully the weak. He did not use too much strength in this push. "Hey, prick my hand again." He stretched out his hand and said to Luo Qingtong. Yesterday, Yuan Hu went back and thought for a long time, but he still couldn't figure out how Luo Qingtong broke his petrification soul seal defense. Could it be that when he was dealing with those people from the intermediate class, he was ambushed and the petrification soul seal's defense temporarily lost its effect? That must be it. Otherwise, how could the other party break through his defense so easily? Yuan Hu couldn't believe it, especially after the news that almost 1/5 of the advanced class had been wiped out. He was even more convinced of his own conjecture. Those people from the intermediate class were indeed strange. Thinking of this, he immediately came over to find Luo Qingtong to verify. Let's see if the other party could still break through his petrification soul seal defense. Yuan Hu wanted to wash away his shame. He wanted to let this woman know that his petrification soul seal defense was very powerful. Last time she broke through his defense was just a fluke. However, in the face of his words, Luo Qingtong only faintly lifted her eyelids. "I don't have time." She didn't come here to perform a juggling act. If Yuan Hu wanted to jump up and down, that was his business. She had no interest in it. "Hey!" Yuan Hu was immediately angered by her disregard. Just think of how famous his little overlord Yuan was in Tianyu Imperial City. This woman actually didn't give him any face. Chapter 463. You don't have time, right? He snorted coldly and raised his hand to snatch Yi Qianxian. "Then you're mine, little doll. When you're free, you can." Ah. Before Yuan Hu could finish speaking, everyone heard a drawn-out shriek. "My hand!" As Yuan Hu's scream rang out, everyone looked at his hand in unison. However, everyone looked at Yuan Hu, who was holding his unscathed hand and howling miserably. Was little tyrant Yuan practicing his acting skills? His acting was so fake. Everyone looked at his hand that didn't even have a scratch, their faces full of disgust. They thought that his hand had been broken by Luo Qingtong. In the end, everyone's lips twitched. However, no one knew that Yuan Hu was really in pain. Just now, Luo Qingtong stretched out her hand and broke his hand. Then, she quickly fixed it back. It was just that she was too fast, and no one saw it. At this moment, the pain of having his bones forcibly broken and reattached was still lingering on his wrist. Coupled with the defense of his petrification soul imprint, the pain of having his bones broken was even worse. That was why he was screaming so miserably. You! He looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. The girl only looked up at him coldly, and her voice drifted into his ears. Don't touch my things again. Yuan Hu, my patience won't always be this good. If not for the fact that Yuan Hu is not a bad person and had helped her once before, Luo Qingtong would have broken his hand long ago. He really wouldn't change. Previously, he snatched the medicinal liquid she gave Chu Wenhao, and now he wanted to snatch Yi Qianxian. Was Supreme Blackfield so easy to bully? Moreover, it was because of her that Yi Qianren's wisp of soul was imprisoned and she lost her strength. Luo Qingtong would never allow anyone to lay a finger on him. I know. Yuan Hu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was really scared this time. His opponent was actually able to ignore his petrification soul seal. One had to know that even a martial king realm expert would not be able to break his hands so easily. What's more, he had the intention of deliberately angering Luo Qingtong, so he raised the defense of the petrification soul seal to the extreme. He didn't expect that it would be so easily broken by Luo Qingtong, and Luo Qingtong's gaze clearly told him that if there was a next time, his punishment would not be so simple. How'd she do it? Yuan Hu didn't even see how she attacked just now. Luo, boss. I'll call you boss. Tell me, how did you do it? Yuan Hu felt as if a cat was scratching his heart. What he was most proud of was his petrification soul seal defense and his innate divine strength. If it weren't for these two things, a martial trash like him would have long disappeared from the imperial capital's Yuan family. Yuan Hu was domineering because he knew that he could only be arrogant and domineering in these few years. Anyway, he was destined to be a trash and would not have any future prospects. Why not take advantage of his current strength to beat up those who look down on him? Anyway, those people would become more powerful in the future, and they might not let go of a trash like him. He might as well strike first and gain the upper hand and teach these people a lesson. It would be worth it even if they took revenge on him in the future. With this thought, Yuan Hu's temper became so muddled. Those disciples from the aristocratic families in the imperial capital also had a headache and couldn't do anything to him. But this time, he was really beaten into submission by Luo Qingtong. One must know that even when his father, General Yuan, who was at the peak of the martial royal realm, beat him, he had never given in so easily. Chapter 464. Little Tyrant Yuan's demeanor suddenly changed. The crowd, who had no idea what had happened between him and Luo Qingtong, nor did they know what had transpired between them through telepathy, were dumbfounded as they watched Yuan, whose demeanor changed from that of a fiend wanting to teach Luo Qingtong a lesson, to that of a fawning lackey. This scene was simply unbearable to the eyes. Everyone watched as he circled around Luo Qingtong and fawned over her in all sorts of ways. The only thing missing was a tail wagging behind her, but they suddenly felt that their eyes were damaged today. Otherwise, there must be something wrong with the little tyrant's head. Wasn't this change too big and so sudden? Could it be that the little tyrant had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong? The people in the lower class naturally did not think that Yuan Hu had been subdued by Luo Qingtong. After all, little tyrant Yuan was a weirdo who could even look down on some of the elite class students. They would never have thought that Luo Qingtong would be able to easily break through his defenses and subdue him. Now, he was following behind her and asking for the reason. In their opinion, there was only one possibility for Yuan Hu's sudden change, and that was that little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong. Everything that had happened before was to attract Luo Qingtong's attention. For example, pretending that his wrist was injured, everyone's imagination was very strong. In less than a day, rumors began to spread. The Yuan family's little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to the fifth prince's fiancée and was desperately pursuing her. Luo Qingtong, however, did not know about this. At this moment, she was frowning as she stood up. That instructor Song Chung had not appeared for the entire day. Looking at the bright red X on the class attendance sheet, Luo Qingtong felt that she had to make a trip to instructor Song Cheng's dormitory. Although, according to the information, he had never met anyone. How would she know if she did not try? Luo Qingtong casually prepared a few questions on miscellaneous subjects and directly left the classroom, heading towards the instructor's dormitory. Little Overlord Yuan originally wanted to keep up, but was easily shaken off by Luo Qingtong halfway. I would like to meet teacher Song Chung and ask him a few questions. In the mentor's dormitory area, Luo Qingtong showed her student certificate of the lower class and explained her intentions. The guards who were in charge of guarding outside the mentor's dormitory had strange expressions on their faces. This was the first time they had seen a student from a lower class come to ask a teacher a question. If this student had come to look for a martial arts instructor or a cultivation method instructor, it would have been fine. This meant that this student was motivated to improve himself. Even if he was in the trash class, he wouldn't be able to hide his intentions. But to ask a miscellaneous subject teacher a question, everyone's heart went into Spartan mode, thinking that there was probably something wrong with this student's brain. The so-called miscellaneous studies were actually all kinds of miscellaneous things. It was fine to learn these things, but it was also fine to not learn them. There were even students who came to ask questions. Moreover, he was a student from the trash class. With a strange expression, the guard asked Luo Qingtong to wait while he went inside to inquire. Luo Qingtong waited outside, her gaze sweeping over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Unlike the students' dormitory area, the management and defense of the mentor's dormitory area were very strict. After all, students needed to learn from each other and get to know each other at any time, but the mentors could not be casually disturbed. If one wanted to see a mentor, they had to get the mentor's permission. They could not just barge in without permission. It was the same for the mentors. Before visiting, they had to inform the mentors. Luo Qingtong swept a glance over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Very quickly, she understood the way to break through it. If Song Chung was really unwilling to see her, then she could only do it secretly. Chapter 465. At the same time, in Song Cheng's dormitory, a person who was almost impossible to appear here was currently standing there with a respectful expression, looking at the old man who was sitting on a rattan chair with his eyes closed in meditation. The dean of Tianyu Branch Academy. If there were any teachers or students of Tianyu Branch Academy here, they would discover the middle-aged man who was looking at the old man respectfully was the dean of Tianyu Branch Academy. A peak martial emperor expert had a very high status in the Tianyu Empire. Tianyu's royal family and various aristocratic families competed to be on good terms with him. At this moment, the dean, who could do whatever he wanted in the Tianyu Empire and was the ruler of Tianyu Branch Academy, was standing respectfully in front of Song Chung. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. After a while, he cautiously called out, "Elder Song." Song Chung, who had been ignoring him, opened his eyes. "You're too ambitious. You want to open the Tian Yang secret realm." That was the training ground for the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty, including the headquarters of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. Only saints could open it. The difference between the students of Tianyu Branch Academy and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin didn't need to be explained. Under such circumstances, the dean of Tianyu Branch Academy came looking for him to open the Tianyang secret realm for the students of Tianyu Branch Academy to train. Was he crazy? Although one's strength would increase quickly, it was also very dangerous. Many people from the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin would die every time they entered, not to mention the Tianyu Branch Academy. Elder Song, I know this is very difficult for you, but the grand event of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin is about to start, and I want to give it a try. I hope that Elder Song can help me this time on account of our many years of friendship. The dean of Tianyu Branch Academy said humbly. In front of Song Chung, he didn't dare to show any arrogance. The origin of this old man was a mystery, and his strength was unfathomable. Back then, when he came to the Tianyu Branch Academy, he requested that he hide his identity and arrange for him to be a low-level miscellaneous subject instructor. The headmaster of the Tianyu Branch Academy did as he asked. Usually, no one dared to disturb him. It was just that the temptation this time was too great, so they couldn't help but beg him to help. If the students of the Tianyu Branch College could really make a name for themselves during the grand event of the Empire of Qin Saint Academy, then it would be a great honor for both him and the Tianyu Branch College. No matter what, he had to fight for it. And the opportunity to fight for this opportunity lay with Song Chung. The dean of the Tianyu Branch School didn't know how strong the other party was, but it was definitely above the saint realm. Humph. Song Chung snorted. All right, I owe you a favor for coming to the Tianyu Branch Academy. Now that you've come to beg me, I'll help you once. But remember, I will only attack once. In the future, if anything happens in Tianyu Branch, don't come looking for me. Song Chung had to say the ugly words first, lest these people keep on pestering him, thinking that he was someone they could just casually ask for whatever they wanted. The reason he chose to stay in the Tianyu Branch Academy was because it was convenient. It wasn't that he had to go to the Tianyu Branch Academy. Hearing his words, the dean of the Tianyu Branch Academy was overjoyed. He nodded repeatedly and promised that he wouldn't bother him again in the future. Only then did he leave happily. Chapter 466. A student from the lower class? She wants to ask me some questions? Tell her that I'm busy. Song Chung felt strange. Why did he insist on being a teacher of miscellaneous subjects in the lower class? It was because he wanted to be able to live his life without worrying about anything. He didn't have enough time to study inscriptions every day. He didn't have time to teach students. Song Chung rejected him without thinking and continued to immerse himself in his inscription experiments. He had an inscription pattern and was about to figure out a clue. He was extremely busy right now. When the dean of Tianyu Branch came, he almost kicked him out of the door, let alone a student who came to ask him some questions about miscellaneous subjects. Luo Qingtong wasn't surprised at all when she heard the guard's reply. She already knew what kind of weirdo Song Chung was from the information she got. From the looks of it, the other party's obsession with inscriptions wasn't ordinary at all. However, she had already achieved half of her purpose in coming to the teacher's dormitory. Luo Qingtong looked at the defense of the mentor's dormitory area several times, and she was almost done deciphering it. She smiled and thanked the guard before leaving with little Ming Zun. At this time, Little Pig also woke up. He rubbed his eyes with his little hoof and jumped onto Luo Qingtong's shoulder. He asked, "You're leaving just like that? You don't care about that teacher anymore? What if he doesn't come to class in the future? Are you going to give up just like that?" "Of course not." Luo Qingtong glanced at him. "Give up?" She came to the lower class to learn inscription techniques. How could she give up? However, this Song Chung was really difficult to deal with. Even if he didn't want to see her, couldn't she just barge in? "Let's go. We'll come again tonight." Swoosh. It was nighttime. The stars and the moon dispersed and the shadows of the trees flashed. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed through Tianyu Branch and soon approached the teacher's dormitory. Tianyu Branch's defense and management at night were very strict. However, compared to the outside of the school, the patrols inside the school were much looser. After all, the students and teachers who could enter the school were trustworthy to a certain extent. The reason why they still had to patrol and defend was to deal with some rare emergencies. Luo Qingtong's figure easily swept past the defense of the teacher's dormitory area. She quickly flew towards the courtyard of Song Cheng's dormitory that she had seen at the entrance this afternoon. That's right, all the instructors had their own dormitories and courtyards. They didn't need to share a room with others. At the same time, it also made things easier for Luo Qingtong. Earlier in the afternoon, Xiao Chun had already memorized the defensive layout of this place. She did not encounter any obstacles as she approached the courtyard of Song Cheng's dormitory. However, just as she stepped into the courtyard, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. Ninefold formation. Beneath her feet, rays of array formation light suddenly rose up and enveloped her body. Ninefold formation, as its name implied, was a formation within a formation that used 9 as the number of folds. This was something that only an array grandmaster who had studied array formations to the extreme could do. Not only that, only an expert of the Sage realm could provide the huge amount of energy needed to set up the ninefold formation's defense. So far, the strongest array formation that Luo Qingtong could set up was the fivefold formation. It was not because her ability to set up array formations was not good enough, but because her strength was not enough to support a more advanced array formation. Chapter 467. *T. Who would have thought? In the dormitory courtyard of a low-class miscellaneous course instructor, there was actually a hidden ninefold formation, which could only be activated by a Saint Realm expert. You must be joking, right? Luo Qingtong didn't dare to hesitate. The bloody light in her eyes intensified. In an instant, her clear and limpid eyes turned blood red. Under the contrast of the blood red color, Luo Qingtong's beautiful face instantly became incomparably demonic. That was a demonic beauty that no one could compare to. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's body completely bloomed. Like a bloodthirsty, demonic flower, the peerless beauty was revealed in an instant. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong's figure swept through the layers of formations. Her swirling skirt was like blood-red flower petals, spreading out layer by layer. Under such circumstances, she broke through the layers of formations one by one. The ninefold formation was set up by 9 levels. According to the technique and energy of the person who set up the formation, 99 or even 999 variations of the formation, Luo Qingtong broke through nearly half of the formation. Song Chung, who was originally doing experiments in his room and didn't intend to come out, suddenly exclaimed softly when he sensed the situation in the formation. The formation outside wasn't set up by himself. Instead, it was a formation frisbee that he obtained from an old friend. After injecting his aura, he could activate the formation inside. He placed it in his dormitory because he didn't want to be disturbed by unnecessary people. Considering that this was an academy, the formation's offensive power was turned off. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been able to break through it so easily. When the energy of a Saint Realm expert was injected into it, even if she could dodge, a light scratch would be enough to make her vomit blood. Seeing Luo Qingtong break through several layers of the formation like a hot knife through butter and was already very close to the periphery of the formation. Soon, she would break through the formation. Even Song Chung, who was immersed in inscription techniques, couldn't help but divert a bit of his attention. Especially after discovering that Luo Qingtong's strength wasn't strong, he was even more surprised. This is a rare, good seedling. Her strength was not strong, which meant that she did not rely on external forces to break the array, but her own understanding of the array. This meant that the other party was extremely talented in setting up formations. Song Chung thought of his old friend. Wasn't he always complaining that he couldn't find a good disciple? Wasn't there a suitable one? With that thought in mind, Song Chung finally pulled himself out from his inscription experiment. Whoosh! As he raised his hand, the light of the array formation enveloping Luo Qingtong instantly disappeared. She herself also appeared in the hall. Which class are you from? Song Chung appeared, sizing up the young girl who had intruded into his mansion in the middle of the night. He had no doubt that Luo Qingtong was not a student of Tianyu Academy. Even if it was just a branch of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, it was not easy for others to enter and leave the Tianyu branch. Moreover, he had set up the formation. If the other party didn't have the aura of the Tianyu branch's nameplate, he would have already started attacking. Song Chung didn't care how this little fellow came to his dormitory. Right now, he was wholeheartedly focused on taking a disciple for his old friend. He immediately looked up and down and was very satisfied with Luo Qingtong. Yes, your aptitude is not bad. Above the sage realm, one could understand the laws of heaven and earth. Song Chung saw through Luo Qingtong's hidden cultivation at a glance. He found that this young girl was already at the 9th stage of the great martial general realm at such a young age and could advance to the martial marquis realm at any time. He immediately nodded in satisfaction. This aptitude was not bad, although it couldn't be compared to those, but her talent in setting up formations was something that others couldn't compare to. 9-layered formation. She could actually handle it with ease. Not bad. Very good. Chapter 468. Before coming here, Luo Qingtong had imagined countless scenarios, but none of them were compatible with the current situation. First, she encountered the 9-fold formation with the aura of the Sage Realm. Now, this instructor, Song Chung, wanted to accept her as a disciple on behalf of his friend after casually asking her which class she was from. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. "I'm sorry, Instructor Song Chung. I'm not interested in becoming someone else's disciple. I came here this time to learn the inscription technique from you." Song Chung originally looked at Luo Qingtong as if she was an old friend's disciple. However, after hearing her words, he suddenly changed his expression. Inscription technique? He looked at Luo Qingtong coldly. "Who did you hear that from?" The old man, who was smiling and nodding his head while praising her, seemed to be Luo Qingtong's illusion. At this moment, Song Chung had turned into an expressionless old man with a strange temper. "I don't know any inscription technique. If you don't want to be my friend's disciple, you can get lost now." Song Chung hated it when people used inscription techniques to tease him. In the past, there were students who came to him and said that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him. However, they treated him as a joke behind his back and mocked him wantonly. Now that he heard someone say that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him, he couldn't help but flip out. "Get lost." As he spoke, he waved his sleeves fiercely and was about to drive Luo Qingtong out of his dormitory. Inside the sleeve, little Ming Zun's eyes flashed when he felt the movement outside. He was about to rush out, but Luo Qingtong raised her hand and stopped him through the sleeve. Song Cheng's identity was unknown. Luo Qingtong didn't know if he would cause harm to Yi Qianxian. If this wisp of soul dissipated, Yi Qianxian's strength would definitely be affected. No matter how much Luo Qingtong wanted to trick Yi Qianxian, she wasn't willing to let him get hurt because of her. Therefore, she stopped him immediately. "It's okay." She quickly transmitted her voice and then suddenly raised her voice. "Instructor Song Chung. A true Sumeru spatial spiritual tool can cut through space, gather spirit springs, and even create a small world. Everything above is due to the power of inscriptions. It can also enhance the sharpness of weapons, the efficacy of pills, and the potential of a human body. You really don't know the inscription technique? Or is it that you don't want it to flourish in your hands, and you don't want others to know that everything you've done is right?" Luo Qingtong's voice was sonorous and powerful, and it resounded in the hall. Swoosh! Song Chung stopped in his tracks. With a wave of his hand, Luo Qingtong's figure, which was about to disappear from the hall, was instantly pulled back by him. "You seem to know quite a lot." He coldly snorted and looked her up and down. He had to admit that Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. Song Chung had researched inscriptions for dozens of years. He gave up his original status and hid his strength in Tianyu Branch Academy. Wasn't it all for the sake of proving that he was right one day? "You really believe in the existence of the inscription technique?" He squinted his eyes and looked at Luo Qingtong. What was there to believe? She still had a pile of inscription technique manuals in her hands. It was just that they were too profound, and she couldn't understand them. She had to learn them first. "I believe." Luo Qingtong looked at him and nodded. "If I didn't believe, I wouldn't have said so much. Isn't that right, Instructor Song Chung?" Luo Qingtong smiled and looked at him. From the moment Song Chung pulled her back, she knew that she had succeeded. Chapter 469. Empty words with no proof. If you want to understand these things, you can still find out a thing or two. Songcheng was not so easy to fool. The main reason was that when he was passionate about teaching disciples, he was hurt too deeply. Now, it seemed that everyone was teasing him and mocking him. However, Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. He was willing to give her a chance, since you want to learn inscriptions so much. Sure. 3 days later, the academy will hold a competition for the reward for the top new student. At that time, 10 weapons will be taken out. I will add in an inscription tool that I have drawn. If you can find it and snatch it, I will believe that you really want to learn inscription techniques. Otherwise, go where you want to go in the future and don't bother me. How about it? Song Chung raised his head and looked at Luo Qingtong. He had an expression that said, "If you can't even meet such a request, then get lost." He was not worried that Luo Qingtong would not be the top new student. The other party was obviously a new face and was so powerful. Among the new students, no one could beat her. No matter where she came from, she would definitely be the top student. Okay, Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. However, I also have a request. She looked at Song Chung and said, "If I meet your request, I will only learn inscription techniques and will not take you as my master." Luo Qingtong set this condition first. She did not want to take someone else as her master. One accident like Tian Mingzi was enough. There was no need for a second one. You wish. You want to take me as your master, but I don't want to take you as my disciple. Song Chung snorted. At this time, he still did not know that he would beat his feet and beat his chest because of this sentence in the future. He wished that he could go back in time and eat these words back. A good disciple that he had gotten, he had lost her just like that. In the end, he could not get her back no matter how hard he tried. It really made people sad and cry. Okay, then this matter is settled. You can go now. After speaking, Song Chung waved his sleeves and sent Luo Qingtong out. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she stood in the hallway of the mentor's dormitory. "Instructor, since you've already sent me out, can't you send me a little further away and at least let me leave the instructor's dormitory?" Fortunately, no one bumped into her. Otherwise, she would be charged with breaking into the instructor's dormitory at night. She would not be able to participate in the competition for the top prize of the freshmen 3 days later. However, Luo Qingtong had not expected Song Chung to be so strong. Fortunately, she had not thought of using force. Otherwise, not only would he fail to learn the inscription pattern technique, but he would also inexplicably provoke a Sage Realm enemy. Luo Qingtong patted her chest and leaped out of the instructor's dormitory. "Why didn't you let me out earlier?" When she left the mentor's dormitory, Yi Qianxian crawled out from her sleeve. "He's an expert above the Sage Realm. It's very likely that he will hurt you." Yi Qianxian looked at her with a frown. Luo Qingtong hugged him and kissed him on the lips. "You also know that he's an expert above the Sage Realm. What if he knows you? You're just a divided soul now. Don't always act like a High Lord. If you're caught by someone and your soul is refined or something like that, your original body will also suffer." Luo Qingtong knew that in this world, there were many methods to deal with souls. She did not understand the realms above the Sage Realm, nor did she know what methods they used. However, she knew that if this divided soul of Yi Qianxian fell into the hands of someone who had a grudge against him, it would cause great harm to him through this divided soul. Since she had imprisoned this divided soul of Yi Qianxian, she had the responsibility to protect him. Chapter 470. Little Mingzun looked at her and snorted proudly. "I'm not as weak as you think. Others want to capture a wisp of this sovereign's soul. Dream on." It wasn't that he couldn't break free from the shackles of the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. It was just that he might hurt the woman who was connected to the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Did this woman really think that he was that weak? As for his original body, even if his meridians were severely injured and he only had 30 to 40% of his strength left, there weren't many experts on this continent who could hurt him. This woman loved to worry for nothing. Although he thought so, Yi Qinxian liked the feeling of being cared for by Luo Qingtong. Yes, yes, yes. You're the best in the world. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. Little Ming Zun's arrogant and narcissistic look was too cute. Was Yi Qinxian like this when he was young? Luo Qingtong imagined it and thought of that man chasing after her with a black face. She couldn't help but laugh. If Yi Qinxian knew that his divided soul had such a dark history after being imprisoned, would he be so angry that he would vomit blood? He would probably spend more money to chase after her. But she didn't regret it at all. It'll be great if you can stay by my side in the future. It didn't matter if it was like this now. Luo Qingtong looked at little Ming Zun with curved eyes and leaned over to peck his lips. Then I can hide you forever. Yi Qinxian now belonged to her alone. Umph. Yi Qinxian snorted and didn't argue with this woman. Anyway, she felt that the original body wouldn't let her go after catching her. It was useless for her to say anything. Let her think so. It'll be fine when the original body comes. But then again, why did the original body take so long to investigate the wisp of Holy Brush Spirit? Was there an accident, and the Holy Brush Spirit wasn't in the holy court of the Empire of Qin? The divided soul had all the thoughts of the original body. Every move was no different from the original body. In an instant, little Ming Zun understood the reason for the accident. At the same time, outside the clouds, blood stained the yellow sand, bones in the forest, and the sound of fighting was endless. The sound of blades, bloody frost, and mournful screams were endless. Numerous powerhouses from all over the true Spill continent had gathered in this mystic realm. For the sake of the treasures that had appeared in this world, they would fight each other to the death, turning this place into a bloody slaughterhouse. The battlefield closest to the outskirts of the outside the clouds had just ended. The victorious parties supported each other and were about to leave. At this moment, on the peak of a distant mountain, at the entrance of the land beyond the clouds, a whirlpool suddenly appeared. Someone else is coming. The group of powerhouses looked warily at the entrance. Of them, Dark Venerable, looking at the silver-robed, black-haired, golden-masked man who jumped down from the top of the mountain like a god. The group of powerhouses were all stunned. The man wore a silver robe with golden embroidery. In the dark, he was noble and extraordinary. His aura was overbearing and difficult to describe. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight with the Dark Regions group, leaving them standing there in shock. The Supreme of the Black Field had also come to the outside the clouds. Didn't he never participate in the fight for the treasures that had appeared? However, they didn't know that Yi Qinxian was here for the treasures in his heart. Luo Qi. This time, I won't give you a chance to escape. Chapter 471. Luo Qingtong brought little Ming Zun back to the dormitory of the lower class. Just as they passed through an aisle of Tianyu Branch Academy, they suddenly heard a muffled roar from the dark woods. Depression, despair, resentment. The smell of death spread. Luo Qingtong's senses were sharp. She turned to look at the woods. Immediately, she saw a person lying on the ground. On the other side, a young man was leaning against a big tree, panting. Noticing Luo Qingtong's gaze, the young man suddenly raised his head and looked at her fiercely. His pair of eyes that were as silent and oppressive as midnight were now filled with hatred, despair, and killing intent. He was seen. Sima Zhu looked at Luo Qingtong fiercely. The killing intent in his heart was overwhelming. At that moment, he wanted to kill Luo Qingtong, who had seen him kill people. But soon, the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. With his current body, it was impossible to kill people. Not to mention, the other party was not afraid of the poison in his body. Call for help if you want. He looked at Luo Qingtong indifferently. Then, he looked away. It didn't matter if he was expelled from the academy or killed by revenge. Anyway, his cursed body couldn't live for long. He was reaching his limit. Sima Zhu lowered his head and looked at the black skin exposed by the torn cloth. Compared to before, it was darker. The darker the color, the stronger the poison accumulated in his body, and the stronger the backlash against him. Now, he was gradually unable to resist the invasion of the poison. Anyway, he was going to die. It didn't matter how he died. Luo Qingtong glanced at the person lying on the ground. She recognized that he was the leader of the group that chased Sima Ju during the day. She didn't expect that he would come to find trouble with the other party at night and lose his life. Not interested. She looked indifferent. Then, she raised her hand and threw a bottle over. Corpse dissolving liquid. If you have nothing to do, clean up the body. Don't let people find out. Why? Sima Ju was ready to close his eyes and wait for death. But suddenly, he heard Luo Qingtong say so. He opened his eyes and saw the bottle of corpse dissolving liquid thrown at him. He immediately reached out and caught it. That pair of deep and silent eyes stared at Luo Qingtong. What do you want? Why did she help him cover up the fact that he killed people? He and she didn't have any friendship at all, wasn't it? In fact, the matter of Sima Ju being killed in the advanced class could be solved. But after thinking about it, Luo Qingtong felt that the other party's body of all poisons was very valuable. This was the first time she had seen such a heaven-defying physique. She really wanted to know what kind of terrifying strength the 10,000 poisons body would possess once it was controlled and erupted. Of all Xian Ju had always liked to. Just think of it as for your body. Luo Qingtong looked at him and said, I'm very interested in your body. Before she finished speaking, Sima Ju had already taken a big step back. He looked at her with resentment and shame. Don't even think about it. Luo Qingtong looked at him unhappily. I'm talking about the poison in your body. Who took a fancy to his body? If anyone took a fancy to it, it should be Qianxian, okay? Chapter 472. 10,000 Poison Body. Luo Qingtong looked at Sima Ju with narrowed eyes. Your physique is very special. I'm very interested in it. If you're willing, I can help you control the poison in your body and solve the hidden dangers in your body. But the price is that you'll sell yourself to me in the future and listen to my orders. If you can accept it, then come and find me. If you can't, then pretend I didn't say anything. As she spoke, she turned around and left. Luo Qingtong wasn't a saint. She would help the other party, but the other party had to pay the price. Luo Qingtong didn't need Sima Ju to recognize her as his master, but he had to guarantee that he wouldn't harm her. Only when the blade was in one's own hands could it be sharpened. Otherwise, why would she cut the other party's blade? No matter how curious Luo Qingtong was, no matter how interested she was in the 10,000 poison body, she wouldn't cross this bottom line. Of course, Yi Qianxian was the only exception. Treating his meridians was a huge loss for her. Swish! Luo Qingtong's figure disappeared in front of Sima Ju. Looking at the faintly discernible figure that disappeared like smoke, the youth standing under the tree clenched the bottle of corpse dissolving liquid in his hand. Luo Qingtong. He muttered the other party's name in a low voice. That pair of eyes that were as still as the midnight sky suddenly burst forth with infinite hope and brilliance. The other party said that she could cure his cursed physique. So, he wasn't some devil, but had a special physique? 10,000 poison body, so there was actually a possibility of him being cured? Sima Ju's heart was beating fast. At this time, the youth still didn't know what this night meant to him. When the name of 10,000 poison sovereign followed in the footsteps of Luo Qingtong and spread to every place they went, causing countless people to be shocked, no one would have thought that the weak and gloomy youth would have such a day. Furthermore, no one knew that he had once stood on the edge of the abyss, just one step away from eternal damnation. It was Luo Qingtong who pulled him out and gave him a completely different new life, allowing him to stand above everyone. Whoosh! Luo Qingtong rushed back to the dormitory. Her roommate, Su Xiaoxiao, was still awake. She was fiddling with something. When Luo Qingtong passed by her room, she suddenly smelled the fragrance of medicine. Su Xiaoxiao was refining medicine. Luo Qingtong was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Su Xiaoxiao to be an alchemist. But isn't this kind of class very popular? How could the mentors of the pharmacy let her go? No matter what, he had to get her into the advanced class. For those with special talents, the lowest starting point would be the advanced class. If they were more talented, they would be in the elite class. After all, there were too few people who had the talent for medicine masters, spirit array masters, and weapon refiners. How could Su Xiaoxiao be assigned to the trash class? Luo Qingtong was surprised. She smelled the fragrant scent and instantly analyzed the medicinal properties of this bottle of liquid in her mind. What surprised her was that the medicinal properties of this liquid, refined by Su Xiaoxiao, were very stable. It was so stable that Luo Qingtong was surprised. There was almost no fluctuation, very stable. This stability meant that as long as the medicinal liquid was formed, no matter what kind of mistakes occurred, it wouldn't fail again. The effect of the medicinal liquid would also be very good. How could such a talented alchemist be assigned to the trash class? Chapter 473. Luo Qingtong. Seeing Luo Qingtong standing outside, Su Xiaoxiao, who was walking out with a disappointed expression, jumped in fright. She was a little uneasy as she dodged to the side. You want to enter? Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly realized that this was her room, not Luo Qingtong's. She immediately blushed, looking at the girl in front of her who was as nervous and helpless as a little white rabbit. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. You're refining medicine? She looked into her room. In the middle of the big desk, there were some auxiliary tools for refining medicine. Su Xiaoxiao nodded lightly, then said with a lonely face, Unfortunately, I failed again. Hearing this, Luo Qingtong looked at her in surprise. Didn't you already succeed? She could already smell the medicinal fragrance. I failed. Su Xiaoxiao stood in front of Luo Qingtong, her head drooping. It looked as if there were invisible velvet ears hanging down from the top of her head. She said very dejectedly, the quality was lowered again. As she said this, her eyes were filled with tears. Clearly, she had already worked very hard. She didn't know why, but she just kept failing. Su Xiaoxiao also didn't know why. They were both pharmacists, and the instructor also praised her talent. However, every time she concocted a medicinal liquid, not only did she spend several times more time than other people, the grade of the same medicinal liquid she concocted was also several times lower than other people's. No matter how she tried, it was like this. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have been assigned to the trash class. Thinking like this, Su Xiaoxiao's heart was very sad. Luo Qingtong looked at her and was even more surprised. Take out your medicine for me to see. The stability of the medicine she just sensed was second only to her. Luo Qingtong didn't understand what Su Xiaoxiao meant by the low quality. But soon she knew. She looked at the bottle of medicine Su Xiaoxiao took out and carefully sensed it. Yellow ranked second grade heart marrow liquid? This heart marrow liquid, shouldn't it be yellow ranked fourth grade? Could it be that she remembered wrongly? That's impossible. Luo Qingtong remembered the instructor talking about it in class today. She even took the opportunity to cram in some knowledge about this world's medicine that she didn't know before. Su Xiaoxiao's eyes started glistening with tears again. I followed the instructor's instructions in the morning, and lowered the quality again, to be able to refine a fourth-grade medicinal liquid into a second-grade medicinal liquid. Su Xiaoxiao could be regarded as a prodigy that no one had ever done before. One had to know that the grade of the medicinal liquid was set at the very beginning, and it was impossible to change it. At most, the concentration of the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid was different, and it was divided into 4 levels: low level, middle level, and high level. Su Xiaoxiao directly refined the other party 2 grades lower. This was really exploding. But Luo Qingtong frowned as she looked at the medicine in her hand. Although it had dropped from a 4th grade to a 2nd grade, Luo Qingtong sensed that there wasn't any change in the medicinal properties of the medicine, and it was obviously more stable than a normal 4th grade heart marrow liquid. In other words, other than the lower grade, this bottle of medicine was no different from a 4th grade heart marrow liquid. It was even better. but the medicinal properties were reduced by half. This was the first time Luo Qingtong saw such a strange situation. How did Su Xiaoxiao refine medicine? Chapter 474. That's how I refined it. I did it exactly as the instructor instructed. Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears from her eyes and said, "But I don't know why, but I just didn't do it right. Maybe I'm too stupid," she said with a desolate expression. She really did follow the instructor's instructions. Little Pig whispered to Luo Qingtong, "But this girl is really too weird. She fiddled with this bottle of heart marrow solution for almost 2 hours. Do you know that? Most people only take an hour to refine this medicine." Su Xiaoxiao actually tripled the time required. Not only that, but the effect of the medicine was also reduced by 2 times. Don't you think this is a scam? She took a long time to refine, and the effect of the medicine was low. No wonder she was assigned to the trash class. However, Su Xiaoxiao's talent in refining medicine was top-notch. The instructor only mentioned this medicine today, and he only casually demonstrated it, but she came back and refined it. Her talent was already top-notch among the alchemists. If she could raise her refining level in the future, she would definitely become an alchemist grandmaster. But, damn it, her refining ability was really bad. She was basically incurable. Little Pig didn't go out with Luo Qingtong tonight. He stayed in the dormitory and knew everything about Su Xiaoxiao's refining process. He had never seen an alchemist like Su Xiaoxiao, whose refining ability was so bad. It was as if the medicinal liquid in her hands had been cursed, making people speechless. Luo Qingtong looked at the medicine in her hands and then looked at the tears on Su Xiaoxiao's face. She suddenly asked, "Then are you going to give up?" "No." Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears off her face. "I like refining medicine. Moreover, the instructor said that my talent in refining medicine is very good. I believe that as long as I persevere, I can do it. Anyway, it's just taking a little longer to refine than others, and the quality is lower than others. At worst, I'll work harder and raise my refining level. Even if I can't compare with other alchemists, I won't necessarily be worse than others," she said firmly. "Yes." Luo Qingtong looked at her, and her gaze softened. When she saw Su Xiaoxiao, she felt as if she was looking at her when she first activated her special ability. At that time, she didn't know how to use her eye technique and was hunted down by others. That was what she told herself. Even if her ocular sorcery could only be used as an auxiliary power and could not help her improve her strength at all, she would never give up and bow down to anyone. She would never become someone else's puppet. In the end, her ocular ability erupted and completely crushed the other ability users. She immediately launched a counterattack against the forces that had pursued her before. Luo Qingtong had always believed that as long as you refused to give up on yourself, no one in this world would be able to give up on you. Not even the heavens. I think you can think of it differently. She lowered her eyes and said to Su Xiaoxiao, "Your talent in alchemy is very good, and the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid you refine are also very stable. Why must you adhere to the formula of the medicine taught by the instructors? If the methods in this world don't suit you, then create a path that suits you. In this world, the reason why geniuses are lonely and the reason why the strong are lonely, that's because the path they walk can't be replicated by others. Su Xiaoxiao, you can definitely walk your own path." Chapter 475. Luo Qingtong poured out the second-grade yellow-grade heart marrow fluid. Seeing her actions, Su Xiaoxiao couldn't help but cry out. In the next second, she suddenly covered her mouth. Because in her line of sight, the medicinal fluid that flowed out of the jade bottle was caught by Luo Qingtong. The young girl's hands seemed to have magic. She held the ball of medicinal fluid and kneaded it, making it stay in her palms. Her movements were like moving clouds and flowing water. It was so beautiful that it looked like she was playing. However, Su Xiaoxiao knew that to be able to lift something so heavy with such ease, one needed to have a shocking alchemy ability. The refinement, extraction, and even condensation of medicinal materials required the cooperation of specialized tools. It wasn't impossible to be like Luo Qingtong and control the medicinal fluid with just the strength in her palms. However, one needed extremely precise control over the medicinal properties and flow of the medicinal fluid. Otherwise, if one used too much strength, it would be easy to crush the medicinal fluid. If one used too little strength, they wouldn't be able to control the medicinal fluid and could only let it flow to the ground. Luo Qingtong's actions were already comparable to that of a heavenly alchemist. Only when one understood the various steps and medicinal properties of refining medicine by heart, and at the same time had superb alchemy ability, could they control these medicinal fluids. But now, in front of Su Xiaoxiao, Luo Qingtong just casually squeezed and held the medicinal fluid. That was fine. Su Xiaoxiao then watched as Luo Qingtong took out a few stalks of medicinal materials. Su Xiaoxiao couldn't recognize those medicinal materials, but she could feel that the medicinal properties on them were very rich. It was very obvious that these medicinal materials weren't ordinary goods. The quality of the medicinal fluid you refined is low, so you can make up for it from other places. Luo Qingtong looked at her and said indifferently. What she said to Su Xiaoxiao was something that ordinary alchemists wouldn't think of and definitely wouldn't do. The heart marrow liquid is a grade 2 medicinal liquid. What if I add in a higher grade medicinal liquid that won't affect the compatibility of the medicinal properties? As she spoke, she held the ball of heart marrow liquid in her right hand and a stalk of medicinal herb in her left. She kneaded and squeezed it, and the stalk of medicinal herb turned into a ball of sparkling green medicinal energy. Luo Qingtong suddenly clasped her hands together. Ah, no way. If so, it will. Su Xiaoxiao's words were only half spoken, and she stopped instantly. She opened her mouth wide in disbelief as she stared at the medicinal liquid in front of her. It hadn't been scrapped, nor had there been any changes to its medicinal properties. After this ball of medicinal liquid merged with the ball of medicinal energy, its quality had increased. Su Xiaoxiao covered her mouth as she stared at the grade 4 heart marrow fluid in front of her. Large droplets of tears fell from her eyes. Level 4 heart marrow fluid. She stared at the heart marrow fluid in Luo Qingtong's hand in disbelief. Advanced 4th rank. How is this possible? Luo Qingtong had casually added in a stalk of medicinal herb, and it actually increased the quality of the heart marrow fluid. So, it could be done in this way. If this was the case, then wouldn't she no longer have to bear the title of a useless alchemist in the future? Su Xiaoxiao's heart was filled with excitement at this moment. She stared at the medicinal liquid in Luo Qingtong's hand in shock and almost couldn't believe her eyes. What Luo Qingtong had done had completely overturned all the theories she had about alchemy in her mind. The formula of a medicinal liquid definitely couldn't be changed casually. Once the medicinal liquid had been refined, other medicinal herbs and liquids could not be added. Chapter 476. Medicinal power and medicinal power can fuse together before, can reinforce each other, can restrain each other. Why can't there be no reaction? Luo Qingtong's voice resounded in her ears. Xiao, what you need to do is to find high-level medicinal materials that won't have any reaction with the medicinal materials in the medicinal liquid you want to refine. Add them to the medicinal liquid you want to refine and improve its quality. If you want to succeed, if you want to improve yourself, don't take the ordinary path. Because you have to always believe that we aren't ordinary people. We are destined to stand at the peak. When Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to see through everything to kill people for the first time, she also told herself this. In this world, there was nothing that couldn't be changed. It's just that we didn't think of it and didn't want to change it. Who said that trash had to accept their fate? Without a strong attack power, even if I relied on my auxiliary ability, I could still play you to death. The only thing that could stop us from moving forward and standing at the peak was never an external obstacle, but ourselves. Qingtong, thank you. Thank you. Su Xiaoxiao was so happy that she wept. Luo Qingtong's words opened the door to another world for her. She didn't want to give up and finally saw hope. I will definitely become the most powerful alchemist. Qingtong, I want to become your personal alchemist, she said excitedly, hugging Luo Qingtong's hand so tightly that it was about to jump up. But soon, she remembered that Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were much better than hers. She didn't need a personal alchemist like her at all. All of a sudden, the invisible velvet ears on Su Xiaoxiao's head were about to droop down. She was indescribably disappointed in her heart. Besides alchemy, what else could she help Luo Qingtong with? Su Xiaoxiao desperately stirred her fingers. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out with a chuckle. Personal alchemist? Then forget it. Xiaoxiao, your ability is not limited to this. Become a combat alchemist. Stand by my side. The stability of your medicinal liquid allows you to stand in front of the stage and not stand behind countless people silently refining medicinal liquid. Luo Qingtong had come into contact with those pharmaceutical maniacs in the 24th century. Which one of them didn't use pharmaceuticals to set off a frenzy? Medicine could save people, but it could also kill people. Ordinary alchemists might not be able to stand in front of the stage and become a fighting force. But Su Xiaoxiao was different. The stability of her potions meant that as long as she had enough potions, she could combine them into different potions with different effects, giving her opponents a nightmarish feeling. Most importantly, the effects of the medicinal liquid produced by such a combination were completely random, making it impossible to guard against. This was the biggest difference between Su Xiaoxiao and other alchemists. She had too many uncertainties, and this uncertainty was the guarantee of her victory. The poisons prepared by other alchemists all had corresponding antidotes, but Su Xiaoxiao didn't. Combat pharmacist? Su Xiaoxiao stared blankly at the young girl in front of her. She listened to her overturn her world one after another. Before today, she had never thought that alchemists could also fight. For most martial artists, it was already good enough that alchemists could use poison to protect themselves. Could she still fight? Inexplicably, Su Xiaoxiao's heart suddenly had a feeling of eagerness to try. She didn't know why, but she had a strong confidence. If the young girl in front of her said so, then she could definitely do it. She could do it. Chapter 477. Back in the room, Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong. Why did you think of giving her advice today? Luo Qingtong had never been a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. Probably because you don't want to see her efforts go to waste. Luo Qingtong put him on the bed and went to wash herself. A person who was able to work so hard to get rid of her fate after being assigned to the lower class was worthy of her advice. What's more, she liked Su Xiaoxiao's temperament of not accepting her fate even when she was as low as dust. He couldn't tell that she was as soft as a little white rabbit, but she had such tenacity in her bones. Amen. Yi Qianxian nodded. Her innate talent is good. If your advice is effective, she may be able to walk her own path that is completely different from other pharmacists. At that time, she could be of help to you. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the young girl who walked to his side and sat down. The latter had just finished washing herself, and there were still some water droplets on her beautiful face. Her long black hair was scattered behind her, and the strands on her forehead were a little wet, sticking to her face. It made her look like a spirit that had just come out of the water. Yi Qianxian couldn't take his eyes off her. Everything about Luo Qingtong amazed him. Her advice to Su Xiaoxiao was something that Yi Qianxian never expected. The young girl's ideas were very bold and very different from the rest. Every time, she was able to give him an enormous surprise. Yi Qianxian thought that it was normal for him to like this woman. In this world, there had never been anyone like Luo Qingtong who could give him all kinds of surprises and unfathomable feelings. She tempted him time and time again to go deeper and understand her more. In this way, he fell step by step. The young girl was intelligent and quick-witted, cunning and resourceful, ruthless and bold. When she was cunning, she was like a fox. When she was ruthless, she was like a fierce wolf. When she was docile, she was like a delicate cat. When she was evil, she was like a bewitching snake demon. Yi Qianxian never thought that he would fall in love with such a seductress the moment he fell in love with her after more than 20 years of not falling in love. Moreover, she was very disobedient. But what could he do? He liked this woman. He liked her so much that he tolerated her disrespect towards him. He liked her so much that he let her break free from his control time and time again. He liked her so much that he would rather let her imprison this wisp of his soul. What happened? Seeing him staring at her without blinking, Luo Qingtong found it funny and sat beside him. She asked, "Is it because I'm too beautiful that you're stunned?" Luo Qingtong just wanted to tease him. However, little Nether Venerable glanced at her and answered in a low voice, "I'm stunned." Luo Qingtong's face was inexplicably hot. This man learned quickly. He even knew how to flirt with her now. Fortunately, this was only a wisp of his soul. Otherwise, what could he do? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and pinched his pink little face. "Since you think I'm beautiful, then quickly serve me." As she spoke, she hugged the little fellow and rolled onto the bed. "Go to sleep." As she spoke, she kissed his face. In the darkness, Yi Qianxian's pair of cute phoenix eyes, which had become smaller, stared at her. After a long time, he slowly closed his eyes. Serve me, right? This was what this woman had said herself. He remembered it. At this time, Luo Qingtong still didn't know how much of a trap she was in. Chapter 478. 3 days later, the competition for the first prize of the new students began. Dang, dang, dang. The crisp sound of the bell spread to every corner of the Tianyu Branch Academy. The competition for the first prize of the new students had always been a grand event in the Tianyu Branch Academy. In this grand event, the 10 weapons given out by the Academy would be fought over by the top students of many countries. The person who won the weapons would stand out from the group of first prize winners. Near the end of the year, the top 10 students of the genius ranking would be recruited into the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. This competition for the first prize of the new students was also called the competition for the genius ranking. Those who were able to stand out from the crowd and win the first prize would become the new top 10 rankers of the genius ranking when the top 10 rankers of the genius ranking entered the main academy of the Great Qin Sacred Academy at the end of the year, continuing their glory and glory in the academy. Therefore, even those who weren't the first prize of the new students would come to watch this competition. They wanted to see who would get the top 10 of the genius ranking in the future. And the older students of the genius ranking would also come to watch. Dang, dang, dang. The crisp sound of the bell kept ringing. Luo Qingtong, Su Xiaoxiao, Sima Zhu, and Little Tyrant Yuan went to the square together. As for how they got together, it all started with Yuan Little Overlord's pestering. On the second day after Sima Zhu came, Little Tyrant Yuan came and wanted to recognize Luo Qingtong as his boss. He even said that if Sima Zhu could come, why couldn't he? Luo Qingtong said angrily that Sima Zhu sold himself to her. What about him? In the end, Little Tyrant Yuan sold himself without saying anything. Luo Qingtong was really speechless. But for Little Tyrant Yuan, he was a martial arts trash. Wasn't it the same no matter who he sold himself to? Anyway, it wasn't his turn to inherit the Yuan family. Moreover, he was hated by so many people in the capital of Tianyu. Maybe in the future, when a disciple of the same generation who was bullied by him broke through, his good days would come to an end. In that case, selling himself to Luo Qingtong would at least let him know how she broke through his defense before he was unlucky. It wasn't a loss at all. Little Overlord Yuan had completely given up on himself. However, what he didn't know was that this fall of his had given him a bright future. In short, little brat Yuan, Luo Qingtong, shamelessly made her speechless. When a group of people arrived at the square was already filled with people. There was a clear distinction between them. The ones closest to the center of the plaza were naturally the students of the elite class, followed by the advanced class, then the intermediate class, and finally the lower class. Luo Qingtong and the others were almost lined up to the edge of the square. They were completely ignored, and no one even knew if they were coming or not. Luo Qingtong didn't care about this. She raised her head to look at the huge silver tablet in front of her. She immediately saw Yuan Ma's name at the very top. "What's that?" Luo Qingtong asked little tyrant Yuan. Among them, only little overlord Yuan knew this the best. Sima Zhu was a sensitive youth with low self-esteem, and Su Xiaoxiao was a shy little bunny. Only little overlord Yuan was a little jumpy. Moreover, as a tyrant of the capital, he knew a lot of things. Chapter 479. He explained to Luo Qingtong, the so-called Academy Historical Tablet is a record of all kinds of important events in the Academy, especially those that brought glory to the Academy. Then he saw Yuan Ma's name and said, for example, the fifth prince was admitted into the Academy of the Empire of Qin and became a new student of the Sky Grade. Of course the Academy would write about it. Alas, he is a real winner in life. As he spoke, he was suddenly stabbed by Sima Zhu. "Hey, what are you?" Before he could ask the question, he suddenly remembered something. F*CKU. The fifth prince. Isn't that boss's fiancé? And the kind that despises her. To be honest, even little overlord Yuan looked down on Yuan Mo and the Yuan imperial family's way of doing things. Originally, if you despise someone else, you can break off the engagement. If Yuan Ma thought he was a genius and that Luo Qingtong wasn't good enough for him, he could just break off the engagement. But they didn't. Not only did they not break off the engagement, they also looked down on the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong. After all, it wasn't that the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong had to suck up to them. It was said that the Luo clan had broken off the engagement once before, but the Tianyu royal family didn't allow it. Furthermore, according to some of the secrets of the royal family that little tyrant Yuan had heard before, it was said that Luo Qingtong's mother was the reason why Yuan Ma could have his current achievements and the Tianyu Empire's current status, becoming a powerful empire among the many empires. It was said that it was Luo Qingtong's mother who cured Yuan Ma's innate cold disease that made him a genius. Since entering the Academy of the Empire of Qin, he wasn't much weaker than the geniuses of the other holy dynasties. This kind of kindness, not to mention Yuan Ma's status as the wife, even the Tianyu royal family should treat the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong well. And the result? Little overlord Yuan curled his lips. It was said that the old man of the Luo family came to break off the engagement, but was humiliated by the royal family and chased away. Not only that, the imperial family even sent someone to the eastern border country to teach the Luo family a lesson, asking the aristocratic families and the imperial family there to cause trouble for the Luo family. Which part of these things looked like they were done because of someone's kindness? Even someone as arrogant and despotic as him looked down on Tianyu's royal family's actions. What was the saying again? She wanted to be a whore, but she also wanted to establish a chastity. Tianyu's royal family, on the other hand, didn't want to be labeled as ungrateful, but they couldn't even erect a memorial arch. Just as little tyrant Yuan was complaining in his heart and was about to apologize to Luo Qingtong and change the topic of Yuan Ma, an extremely arrogant voice suddenly came from the front. "That's right. My royal brother is such an outstanding person." While speaking, a young girl wearing an emerald green palace dress, surrounded by a group of people, walked towards Luo Qingtong. It was 7th Princess Yuan Shui. The latter was slapped and kicked by Luo Qingtong in Yan Yuju's carriage. It wasn't until today that the swelling on her face disappeared and she came to school. If it wasn't for that, she definitely wouldn't have been able to escape the zombie pill incident. Luo Qingtong felt that she was lucky. At this time, Yuan Shui raised her head and looked at her with an arrogant expression. "Luo Qingtong, I heard that when I wasn't here, you were directly assigned to the trash class? You really lost face for my brother and the imperial family." Chapter 480. As soon as she said that, Everyone in the lower class glared at her. So what if they were in the trash class? They weren't talented enough, but people like Yuan Shue might not be any better than them, other than some second-generation heirs who were thrown into the trash class because they had no talent. Most of the people in the lower class were sent here because their family background wasn't good enough and their talent was average. If they were descendants of aristocratic families, they could still enter the intermediate class or the advanced class with their talent and the nourishment of elixirs all year round. Most of the descendants of aristocratic families entered the advanced class like this. Why did Yuan Shue have to say that about them? Little Tyrant Yuan was also angry, because he was now the trash class person who was too ashamed to come to school that Yuan Shue was talking about. F***ck your grandpa. Even if your uncle can tolerate it, your aunt can't. Yuan Shue, what the F***ck are you saying? He glared at Yuan Shue. Little Tyrant Yuan was a reckless person who didn't care about anything. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become a tyrant in the imperial city as a martial arts trash. Although he was destined to not have much future, his divine power and petrification soul imprint would still give him a place in the Yuan family. When he entered the Yuan family army in the future, he wouldn't necessarily be worse than others. Therefore, Great General Yuan was still indulgent towards him. As for the other aristocratic families, they couldn't say anything when their descendants were beaten up. Who asked Little Tyrant Yuan to be a trash? If your descendants couldn't even beat a trash, how could you have the nerve to settle the score with the Yuan family? Therefore, Little Tyrant Yuan was arrogant all the way here. Even if he met Yuan Shue, he wasn't prepared to give her any face. Anyway, he was a trash who didn't inherit the family business and didn't need to curry favor with the Yuan royal family. Why should he lower his head to Yuan Shue? I was wondering why she still had the nerve to come to school. What's wrong? Yuan Shue didn't show any weakness. It wasn't that she hadn't heard of Yuan Hu's reputation, but so what? He was just a trash who relied on his brute force to show off his power. She was a princess. How could she be afraid of him? Did he really think that his brute force was invincible? She didn't bring the guards by her side. Otherwise, any one of them would be enough to beat him to the point where even dogs wouldn't recognize him. Yuan Shue didn't believe that Yuan Hu would dare to attack her. Luo Qingtong, look at what kind of people you're hanging out with. Yuan Shue's gaze was contemptuous and contemptuous. A bunch of useless trash. You didn't want the recommendation that the royal family gave you. You even faked your first place, and you were sent to the trash class. Are you trying to embarrass the royal family on purpose? To have a fiancé like you, my imperial brother, is really lucky. Before she could finish her words, a slap landed on her face instantly. That slap landed right on the half of Yuan Shue's face that had just healed, instantly slapping her face to one side. Blood flowed from the corner of Yuan Shue's mouth. Princess, seeing Yuan Shue being slapped to the side, the people around her immediately surrounded her. Luo Qingtong, how dare you hit Princess Qi? Yuan Shue also held her swollen cheek and roared at Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong, you be *tch, how dare you hit me? The same slap overlapped with the one that Yuan Shue had suffered in Yin Yuju's carriage, causing her anger and humiliation to soar. Why did Luo Qingtong have to hit her? She only deserved to be humiliated and trampled on. Why did she have to hit her? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.